Look at that. We're live again with today's 220-1201 A+ study group. This is the Core 1 A+ study group for our first A+ study group for the 1200 series. So this is kind of exciting. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We're in our pre-show right now, which is why it seems like it's very, very dark in here. But the reality is, this is really what it looks like. It just seems like it's super dark. Well, I guess technically it is super dark. It is very dark in here. That's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be, so I can control the light. Hello, chat room. How's everybody doing? We get started at the top of the hour. We are at 11:51 right now. This is my chance to check and make sure that all of our stats look good, and they do, that all of our camera inputs look okay. Yes, they do. That our recordings are going. Yes, they are. So we're in good shape. So folks in the chat room already mentioning this is the 1201 study group instead of the 1101. The 1201 has obviously been out since March. And usually we do about 3 months into a new exam, we start shifting things over. So this is about 3 months, just before 3 months anyway. We're a little ahead of schedule. How about that? So that's good. We got, of course, you could take either one of them right now. We'll talk about that at the beginning of the live stream, but we will get started at the top of the hour. We'll be able to see what's going on. All right. Everything seems to be okay. We have been in here shooting video a lot lately, so I didn't have to set up very much. I just sort of sat down and turned on the stream, and everything is working okay. So that part's good. We have a lot of editing to do right now. So we're still working on getting the last few videos out, which is great. They turned out amazing. We've stopped shooting, actually. We're done with the shooting process. So that part's kind of fun because having to get in front of the camera every day and look pretty because I am adorable. So I have to make sure I'm presentable. So now I can, except when I'm doing a live stream, now I can maybe skip a day looking good. I can look my normal awful self, which is great. We got that going on. So we've got a lot to go through today. They will be all questions specific to the 1201 exam, although most of the questions we do today will apply to both. So if you're someone who is still studying for the previous exam version, I will make a note and point out this one applies to both. This one applies to both. This one may only apply to one. So I'll bring that up as we go through. So you'll know. We'll figure out the details. Looks like they updated some of the UI components on the Vevox that we use. It's available not at that screen, at this screen. So if you wanted to put your virtual pin in our pin cushion here, you can do that by visiting the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you can do that. You can absolutely point your virtual pin cushion into this piece. So that's good. We've got plenty to go through today. This will be fun. We've got, I always like doing the questions and the answers and going through that part. It's always interesting to see what we get. Of course, it's a new performance-based question today. I've already written the questions for Thursday, which will be a 12:02 live stream. We've really just converted over everything and pretty much just continue with that. We'll do Network Plus next week and Security Plus the week after that. So we got a busy June ahead of us. It's already been busy. It will continue to be busy in June. June's a busy time. And then we're writing new stuff. It's a very exciting time for what we do because it's just whenever you put new content out, it's always very exciting. I always like doing that. I always like putting the videos out on YouTube and making them available. I say this every time we do a new course, but I really feel like the new course is better than the previous versions, not just in production value, because we do constantly upgrade things. I mean, this is my boat. So if there is a money pit at my house, at my studio, this is the money pit. Everything goes into this. So it's exciting that when we create something from this conglomeration of things that we've put together here, it's always very exciting. What is the difference between 1101 and 1201? We'll talk about that as well. If you want to go and deep dive in the after show, you're welcome to, but we have an article on our website that does describe the differences. I know YouTube Music does not have my study group's podcast because YouTube has the podcast. All the replays are there. I don't publish a video format of this event in podcast form, but I did talk to my my YouTube representative last week and talked about how viable would it be to create a video podcast version that was just put on YouTube Music. So we were talking about doing something like that, and she said that would be fine if we were to do that. It wouldn't disrupt anything or cause problems for folks. So we might consider doing that with this event because I have the original video that's saved, and I can chop off this 10-minute pre-show and just have the live stream. In fact, I could even publish it in 4K on the podcast version. So I don't know. It's something that may be a one-off. I don't know how many people would watch it, but you will never know until you try it. So we'll do that. The 1101 and 1201 are simply different versions of the same exam. They don't cover different topics. It's the same content in both of them. It's just every 3 years they update the content. And we're currently in the 6-month overlap period between those two where both exams are available. That's really the primary difference. But I detail exactly what has changed. Not very much in this particular iteration, thankfully. So that part's good. Well, there's plenty going on here. I have how many hours is this? Well, we do 1 hour of Q&A where I ask you questions, and then we have the second hour that we call our after show, where you can ask me questions. And you can ask me questions at that same link that's on your screen. You can do that at any time. You don't have to wait for the second hour. You can simply plug in professormester.com/QA, and you can submit your questions that we will address in the second hour, which is kind of fun. The first hour, I do lots of prep. So we have questions and answers and explanations available to you. And then on the after show, there's no prep. It's one where you just ask me questions and I figure it out as we go. Left side is not coffee. We're way past coffee today. So it's just a cold beverage that will keep the throat from completely falling apart at some point. I don't often get a chance to take a sip during the live stream because it's mostly me talking, but that's fine. We're good there. Does my A+ course include everything? Well, it includes every topic from the CompTIA exam objectives, if that's what you mean. Of course. Why would I? I would be remiss if I was to create an A+ course that did not include everything you needed to pass the A+ exam. So I would highly recommend you watch the very first video of the course. I talk about what's in the course, where does this course come from, how do we know it has all of the right objectives, all of those things. So we'll talk about that. Does this live apply to the 1101 as well? Part of it will, but almost everything here, everything in this live stream today is for the 1201 exam, but most of the questions on the 1101 and 1201 are the same. There's not a ton of differences between the two. So we will talk about that as we go through. There may be questions today that are exclusive to the 1201, and I'll describe it then that they are, so you know. But I had some questions left over from the previous study groups. So those are the ones we do first. And obviously the ones that were left over were for the 1101 exam. But I do have some 1201 questions in here. I don't know if we will get in there. Will the studio setup change in the future? No, studio setup will remain like this. You know, it's not dark here. This is fine. It's not a dark theme. The rest of it's a dark theme. When I'm in here and not doing a live stream, the windows are open. It's a bright, airy place. It's quite nice, but it's not right now because you can't control any of that. That's the challenge. All right, and not much. We're not really planning to change much at all with this setup. This is working. In fact, we upgraded it earlier in the year. So it's new audio, it's new video. There's a lot that's changed. You just never saw it, but here it is. I'm loving it, by the way. Look at that, top of the hour, 12 o'clock. Let's get Keynote up and running. Hello, Keynote. Are you with me, Keynote? Big green light. Look at that. My event is starting, it says. That's kind of nice. We can make that happen. And we should be able to get rid of this, and get a live stream going. Why don't we do that right now? Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2025 Professor Messer 220-1201 A+ study group. This is our Core 1 A+ study group, where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you get to answer them live and online, and we all get to see how well we do with that. It's always fun. Thank you for joining us and carving out a little bit of time. If you're watching this on the replay, you can, of course, join in. There won't be the interactive part, but you could select which option you think is the best one to go with, and we can certainly talk more about the details of that as we get into it. If you want to participate, you're here live, you'd like to answer these online, you are more than welcome to. You can go to professormesser.com/QA and answer those questions. This will bring you to the Q&A screen where you will see questions come up, and you can simply just stay on that screen to be able to answer these questions. In fact, I start the live stream with a question that we did in a previous study group just to see if you're able to get in and answer the questions that we have there. This question that we have is one that asks, a company's in-house development team is building a new application using the tools available on a cloud service provider. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, sandbox, or PaaS? One of those would certainly be important to know about. Our standing rule with these, of course, is to answer them with the link that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to instead go to the link that you have there at professormesser.com/QA. There's plenty to go through. We will come back to this question in just a moment, but mull over that one a bit and see if you know what you think the answer might be. Let's now give you a little bit of an update on where we are with the A+ certification exam. Before we get really started on this, there's quite a bit to go through. There are actually 2 different exams available right now, so you might want to figure out the details on what is really going on with this as we step through more of these. But of course, if you would like to find us online, we are probably at one of the social media sites that you often will visit. You simply need to type in professormesser.com/ and the name of the site you would like to find us on. Professormesser.com/YouTube, of course, has our entire A+ training course, every minute of every training video covering every topic from the CompTIA exam objectives. We're, of course, available on the service formerly known as Twitter. We have an Instagram, Discord, and much more. We'll talk a little bit about those as we go through this process today. Listen in during this first hour. I will give you information on how you can earn 1 hour of a continuing education unit credit. This obviously only applies if you are currently certified and need to renew your certification, but a number of people that are here are going through the process of recertification, and this might help you a bit. Just listen in sometime during this first hour, and I will give you all of the information you need to earn that 1 hour CEU. As I mentioned, there are 2 separate A+ exam series that are currently active. As many of you know, there's a 3.5-year time frame that an exam is active. And at the end of that 3.5 years, that exam series is retired. About 6 months before that retirement date, however, a new exam is introduced, and we are in that middle period where both of those exam series overlap with each other. So we have our existing exam that we've been working with since April the 20th of 2022, and it is these numbers. Make sure you make a note of these numbers. It's the 220-1101 and 220-1102. You will also see this referenced on the CompTIA website as version 14 of the A+ exam. That's kind of a new version number that they've added recently. This exam series retires on September 25th of this year. We're in June. You've got July, August, September. 3 months left to be able to pass both of those exams and get your A+ certification. So if you're currently studying these versions, you're currently working on the 1101 and 1102, keep working on them. You got 3 months left. Make sure you get both of them done before the retirement date. If you don't get both of them completed before that date, you will have to start over with the newer version or whatever version's left. Both of these are current, but that will be the version that is left. This exam itself is 90 minutes for each one of these exams. On the 1101, you need to score a 675. On the 1102, you need a little bit better, a 700. Both of these are in a scale of 100 to 900. So it's a little bit different. I'm working through those. So I think that might help you a bit with understanding the details of this. You can find out more about the objectives on the link you see here, professormesser.com/objectives. Although I will tell you that CompTIA has recently changed their website in the last week, and that does not directly take you to the objectives any longer. We can talk about that in the after show. The version of the exam that is replacing this soon-to-be retired version is the 1201 and 1202. This technically is one that's already been released. It's been out since March 25th of this year, which means many people have already certified themselves with their A+ certification by taking the 1201 and 1202 exams. You might also see these exams referenced as version 15. The same requirements exist, the same scores that you need to make, the same scales are existing. Everything is the same with these versions. What's important to keep in mind is regardless which version of the exam you take, either the 1100 series or the 1200 series, you earn exactly the same A+ certification. There is no special benefit or extra thing you get by earning your A+ by taking the 1200 series. There's also nothing special or anything extra that you get by earning your A+ certification by taking the 1100 series. So you're a winner either way in this point. Someone who takes their 1101 and 1102 is just as A+ certified as somebody who passes their 1201 and 1202. So that's another thing to keep in mind, that you can't make a bad decision here. Your only challenge right now is time. You're in the middle of this transition period, and on September 25th, the 1101 and 1102 exams will cease to exist, and you will have no choice but to take the 1201 and 1202 exams. So take that into account with your studies. If you don't think you're going to be able to pass the 1101 and 1102 by September, you should immediately start studying the 1200 series. Just go ahead and go back. Now, if you think you can squeeze it in there, maybe you've already passed one of those 1101 or 1102, work really hard. You've got 3 months. That's certainly something you can pass in 3 months and be able to earn your A+ certification before those are retired. We have this live stream available on our YouTube channel immediately after we're done. And if you wait about a day, you'll notice that timestamps are suddenly appearing in the list. That is on our YouTube video description that helps you find exactly what you are looking for. So that is something that might help you as well. Have a look at that, see what options you might have available by going to that part. The way that we're able to put these timestamps on, by the way, is thanks to my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She is busy watching the replay of this and probably watching the replay of the chat as well. Make sure you give Lori a hello and a thanks if you're someone who likes to use these timestamps. You can go back years to find exactly what you're looking for with every single one of these live stream videos. So pretty useful and important to keep that in mind. And I think it's something that might help you a lot with your studies. Let's also talk about what we're doing when we're done here. When I'm not doing a live stream, you could certainly go to the link that we have for our Discord. That's where we usually hang out. That is at professormesser.com/Discord, and that will help you quite a bit. There's thousands of people on our Discord that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, or Security Plus exams, and others. And we have lots of really smart people on that Discord, and it's such a nice community that is so willing to help everyone else. You can certainly find out more about that by going to professormesser.com/Discord, and we hope to see you over there. Also let you know that we have vouchers available on our website. You will eventually need to, of course, be able to take your exam, and we have all of our vouchers available at professormesser.com, and they're discounted. So you could pay full price over at the CompTIA website, or you could get them at a discount by following the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers so that you will know exactly what those discounts might be. And another thing that you may not be aware of now on this is we recently added vouchers that include a retake option. This is probably one of our number one requests, is to have vouchers that have a little bit of that insurance policy. It's an extra $49, I think, to add that on to your voucher. So if that's something that you were interested in or something that you would like with your vouchers, it's now available at professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get a discounted voucher, you also get something that you can't get anywhere else. You can have it at, notice that we include our Exam Hacks ebook with a purchase of a voucher for no additional cost. So this is something where I put together a set of tips and tricks that are specific to taking the CompTIA exams, things that you can do to help you study. And I give you a series of tips that you can use during the exam itself to help with the exam process. Maybe this will get you a couple of extra exam points. Might be something useful to be able to make that happen. Have a look at that. It's at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now go back to the question we asked earlier, which is a company's in-house development team is building a new application using the tools available on a cloud service provider. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is it SaaS, hybrid, IaaS, sandbox, or PaaS? Let's stop the poll and see how you did with this one. We can see that 65% of you chose platform as a service. 17% of you said it is software as a service, and 12% said infrastructure as a service. We also have 4% that said hybrid and 1% that said sandbox. Well, as many of you know, if you are doing your own development on these cloud-based applications, and in fact, in this case, it's a company's in-house development team is building this new application, then it can't be software as a service because there's no development work you would have to do with that. It could be infrastructure as a service, and it could be platform as a service, although because you are using the tools available on a cloud service provider, the answer to this one is going to be platform as a service. So this is one where you are doing the development. You are in control of the application. You're the one who's making all of the application changes. The only difference, though, is you are using the building blocks for this application that are provided by the cloud provider. Good example of this would be things like Salesforce.com. They have a pretty substantial platform as a service offering, and that's one that can help quite a bit if you are studying up for your cloud infrastructure and understanding the details of what these different deployment options might be. Here's a very quick summary of these different cloud models. You can see if you're doing everything yourself, you're managing it. Everything you're managing is in blue here. With platform as a service, you're managing the application of the data, but then everything else is handled by the cloud provider. So that is the difference between all of those different cloud models and what the responsibilities might be for both sides, both you and for the cloud provider that you are working with. So if you are one of the folks that answered the 65% platform as a service, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. You know your cloud services pretty well at this point. This is a challenging topic to try to figure out, so make sure you are familiar with it and that you are someone who is understanding the differences between software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, and you'll be ready for the exam. Well, that gets us through this first part where we have been able to answer a question using this user interface that we have online in real time. Now let's do something a little bit different, not too far off the mark. As many of you know that have attended one of these live streams before, the first new question of every month is what CompTIA refers to as a performance-based question, a PBQ. Performance-based questions are really just any question that is asked in a form other than multiple choice. So the question we just did was a multiple choice question. There was a single question and there were multiple answers to choose from, which means if you didn't know the answer to this, you could have guessed and you had a 20% chance of getting it right. On the exam, it's even better because usually there are only 4 answers on the actual exam. So you have a 25% chance of getting it right just by guessing. Well, CompTIA doesn't want to make it that easy for you. They want to see if you really know the content and really understand the details of this. So one of the things you can do is to answer a question that is not multiple choice. It might be a fill in the blank. It might be a drag and drop question. They might put you at a command prompt. They might have a different way of asking the question and having you fill out the details of this. But the advantage of this, of course, and the thing that's important for you is that anything they can ask is coming directly from the official exam objectives. So they don't go off the scope of the exam objectives. They stick to the list of exam objectives. And as many of you saw last month, we did a performance-based question where we identified aspects of the inside of a desktop motherboard. And I thought, well, we did the inside of a computer. Let's do a performance-based question where we talk about the outside of the computer. Let's get rid of my face on the screen here just a moment. There we go. This is a question that asks you to name the interface. And we have a picture on the screen. I have to apologize for the folks that are in the podcast, the audio podcast. You won't be able to see this, but we are effectively looking at the back panel of a computer. So this is what you would see on the back of a desktop computer. Now, this is probably a better picture than you would get by looking at this on an actual computer, because usually it's behind the system. You have to reach over the system, and maybe with a flashlight, you can sort of see the ports that are on the back. There's quite a bit of wrangling sometimes you have to do to look into the back of a computer. And sometimes you're using your fingers without looking to try to find the interface wherever it might be. I don't necessarily recommend that as a good way to manage this process. So what I have for you on the screen are 5 different interfaces that I have picked out. I want you to tell me what those interfaces are. This is something you will do quite often when working in the industry, because we want to see if you really do know what these interfaces might be. If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen that you can kind of see now that I've cut it off a bit, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your answer for all 5 of these interfaces. Question in the chat room, they're asking, are these questions going to be asked in the exam? Questions like this could certainly be asked in the exam. Obviously, we don't know what's going to be on the exam because all of the content on the exam is proprietary, and there's a non-disclosure you take when you take the exam. You can't talk about the exam. So, and of course, we're not going to give you exact exam content. That would be not just unethical, that would be ridiculous. That'd be super cheating. So we don't super cheat here. Instead, wouldn't it be easier if you just learn the content and then they can ask the question however they'd like, and you will know the answer? That's really the best way to get through an industry exam, in my opinion. So have a look at what the options are to be able to work through all of these. A lot of different interfaces on the back of this one. We're starting to see more and more appear in the industry. I'm starting to see also, as I tried to find the right picture to show you for this, another thing I found interesting about this is that it seems that we went to this phase where we were putting more and more interfaces on the back of computers. Now it seems like we're going the other direction, and a lot more of these and this direction will be something we can work through. So have a look at what you think the answer is. Submit it at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA. This could certainly be a question on the exam. The good thing about a performance-based question, and the bad thing about a performance-based question, is it is a question that can simply be created in any format that CompTIA would like. So they can create any style of question they would like, any type of question. As I often say, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. As long as you know the content, you'll be able to answer it. And I think this is a really good example of this. For example, on your exam, you probably won't have a fill-in-the-blank question. I haven't seen any of those on the actual exam. So this format would most likely be a pull-down menu, or it would be a drag and drop where you can match things together. But I made this one a little bit harder. I wanted you to tell me the interface without having any prompting whatsoever on the screen. I just think it makes it a little more fun and maybe even a little bit easier to understand what we're trying to do. There's a lot less on the screen to deal with. Let's see how you did with this one. A number of you have submitted your answer already. Let's see how you did. We'll step through each one of these interfaces and see if we know what these are. Hopefully you're able to follow the arrows that I have on the screen. So this first arrow, number 1, is pointing to this connection at the very top of what appears to be 4 very similar connection types to be able to work through that. So that means that this is a USB standard A interface. This is that patented interface that requires you to push in the cable 3 times before it will connect. It's just an industry standard in how we do things. Doesn't work the first time, you flip it over. Doesn't work the second time, you flip it over again, now it works. And for some reason, that works every time that way. I don't know why that is, but there's something magical about the USB standard A interface that requires multiple connections for that to be able to work properly. That is probably one of the most common USB connections you will find, so you certainly want to be very familiar with that interface type. The second one on our list is this option number 2. This one is pointing to a kind of a larger interface with a connection here at the top. It's not a perfect rectangle, but it does have something taken out of the top of this one. Looks like there's little lights next to it as well, and that is what those little squares are next to this interface, are status lights, because this is an RJ45 interface. This one specifically is an Ethernet interface, so I'll accept either one of those as the interface type. You can see that this is where you would plug in a wired Ethernet connection to the back of this computer. That is obviously not the only way to connect that to the back of a computer, but is certainly one of the ways that you can use to connect this information to the back of the computer. And if you're not doing anything relating to wireless, then you probably are plugging in with a wire, and that is where you will connect that Ethernet connection. The status lights will tell you first if it sees a link, if it sees that there's a switch on the other end or some other device on the other end and creates an electrical connection, it will turn a light on. And most of the time, that second light is used as a notification that data is passing over that connection. So you can certainly have a look at that interface and see, am I connected to the network? And is this interface seeing traffic from the network? And you can identify both of those by looking at those lights. Next on our list is number 3. This third one is pointing to an oddly shaped interface that has, it's almost an oval, but there's a little notch taken out of one corner of it. So you can only plug in to one connection. That is a DisplayPort connector that is used for video. So if you are connecting up a monitor that will connect with a DisplayPort connection, that is the interface you will use on your computer at the other end. It looks exactly the same on the monitor as it does the computer. So you will see 2 very similar interfaces on both of those. Very easy to remember since both of them look exactly the same. This is the DisplayPort, by the way, that most of these have built-in locks. So if you're trying to disconnect a DisplayPort interface, you'll notice it doesn't pull out very easily. One thing that you should take with you your entire life in your career is to never yank on anything. You should never have to pull hard to remove something from a connection. If you're pulling really hard on a cable, you're doing something wrong. And DisplayPort is a good example of this because often there is a unlocking key, something you push on the cable to unlock it, and then it easily slides out of that connection. So make sure you don't yank on that one. You could very easily damage something by making that happen. Next on our list is this 4th connection. It's just under the DisplayPort interface. And this is one that's probably a little bit better because you could see this is one you've probably run into before. That's an HDMI connection. So this motherboard has 2 inboard video connections, one that is DisplayPort and one that is HDMI. So you do have some options on this motherboard as to the type of connection you would like to use. So that can certainly help you quite a bit. You're covered either way. What you don't have on this motherboard, interestingly, is an analog video connection. Most motherboards have dropped them these days. So you've got no VGA connection on the back of this motherboard, for example. This is all digital for video on this particular system. And the last one on our list, number 5, is pointing to this interface way over here. It looks like it's underneath another USB standard A interface. So it's not too surprising that the USB interface that we can see is above a different USB interface that is a USB-C interface. I think probably everybody got that one. This has become the default for USB connectivity. Not only because it's a standard interface that no longer has that try it 3 times before you connect. For some reason, this interface, you just plug in and it works. I'm not sure what they were thinking. But this interface also can transmit more than just serial data. It can transmit video data. It can encapsulate a lot of different types of data formats inside of that USB-C interface. And in fact, USB-C describes the physical interface. So this interface could send serial data. It could send HDMI video. It could send Thunderbolt content. My Thunderbolt displays that I have here in the studio, this is my studio, and all of the displays that I'm using are connected with USB-C connections using Thunderbolt. So it's a good example of how you can use that USB-C connection to be able to provide many different types of interfaces and connections. So I'll accept, I wouldn't necessarily call that a Thunderbolt port, but I'll give you half credit, I think, for those. You'll notice that these USB-A, the standard A interfaces, some of them are colored with a black color, some are a darker blue, some are a lighter blue. And I don't know the specifics of this motherboard, but it is very common for motherboard manufacturers to color different USB standards with different colors. This is the colors they use are not standardized, however, so you'll need to look at the manufacturer's content and documentation to determine what they are. But I would bet in this case, you probably have a USB 1. Or version 1 type interface. You probably have USB version 2 is probably these others. And then I'll bet the one with USB-C is probably a USB version 3. And if we were able to, I think you can even see on the motherboard, let's scroll up a little bit, and you can kind of see it has written on the motherboard U32. So this is probably a USB 3.2 standard on that interface. You can find out a lot when you can read the motherboard. And now that you know that, you could probably gotten a few of these right. Notice the one next to the Ethernet, let's zoom in again, says LAN. So we know that that's a local area network connection. So that is exactly what we see there with that Ethernet interface that we see just above. And the little lights in there. Plenty to look at there. I always, whenever I'm walking through a data center, there's just racks and racks and racks of equipment. It's always interesting to try to point out what is in that rack, what equipment is that, and then on the other side of the rack, it's interesting to see all the interfaces that are being used. So make sure that you're familiar with some of these. These can certainly come up on your exam. This is only a few of the interfaces that you need to know for your 220 1101 and 1201 exam. This particular question covers both of those exams that are currently there. And this is one that you should be familiar with. That was our performance-based question of the month. I think I was looking through a number of the answers you were inputting, and most of these were spot on. You did a great job at identifying what those interfaces happen to be. Make sure you are familiar with all of the interfaces that are listed on your CompTIA exam objectives so that you will be properly prepared for your exam. Let's now move on past our performance-based questions. And let's do another question that is a traditional multiple choice. This next one is about wiring. The question asks, a technician is wiring a T568B connector, but the cable is not working. Which of the following two wires should be switched? So I have in this list, I think this is one that you can see the non-working version of this. Let's put the right screen up so you can see it properly. So the question now becomes on here, which one of these two wires should be switched? So I have for you this view of the cable. And for those of you listening on the podcast side, the non-working T568B cable has on wires 1 through 8, I have white and orange, orange, white and green, green, white and blue, blue, and white and brown, brown. So that is pins 1 through 8 respectively. And you can see that we have answers. Do we need to switch wires 1 and 2? Do we need to switch 2 and 4? Do we need to switch 3 and 5? Do we need to switch 4 and 6? Or do we need to switch 6 and 8? You can submit your question by going to the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your question. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer the question by visiting the link that you see right there on the screen to give me the answer for a T568B connection. As many of you know, you need to know this information for both your 220.1101 or 220.1201. So this question applies to both of those. Let's see if you really know what the answers are. As always, please, you can answer by visiting the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. You'll be able to know what that answer happens to be. We'll find out what it is in just a moment. You can submit those at any time. This might be when you really have to parse it through and figure out what the details are. And it is nice that this particular question does apply to both the Core 1 version 14 and the Core 1 version 15. So you're good to go there as far as both of those are concerned. So hopefully you're familiar with your colors. You do need to know these pin colors, not only for the exam. Obviously, the exam does ask about this, but you need to know this when you're working in the field. How do you know if the cable that you're using is wired properly? You will very often take two ends of an Ethernet cable and hold them next to each other to see how they are wired. And you need to understand what those colors are, where they should go, and you'll be able to look at that cable and know if it's wired the way that you would like it to be wired. It's one of the great ways about working with these. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a technician is wiring a T568B connector, but the cable is not working. Which of the following two wires should be switched? Is it 1 and 2, 2 and 4, 3 and 5, 4 and 6, or 6 and 8? Let's see how you did. I'm going to close the poll and we can see how you did. 57% of you say that the answer is 4 and 6. So you would swap the green and the blue is what you're saying. 15%, we have a tie for second place. 15% of you say 3 and 5. That would be white and green and white and blue. And 15% of you said 2 and 4. So that would be orange and green would be swapped. 11% of you said 1 and 2. So that would be the white and orange. And then only 2% of you said 6 and 8, which would be blue and brown. So now let's show what you have as a non-working T568B, and let's put it next to a working T568B. We have that answer right here. So here's the one I was showing you earlier with the white and orange, white and green, white and blue, white and brown. You know, I wish it was wired this way. That would be very easy to remember, wouldn't it? But it's not. Whoever put this one together did a bad job, because in reality, you need the 4th pin to be blue and the 6th pin to be green. So what we were looking for the answer is to be able to have pins 4 and 6 to be able to understand that this really is a 568B type of wiring. Everything else in this connector is perfectly fine. There's really nothing else we have to put in here. It's really only those 2 pins that got swapped during the configuration of this. So it's important when you put those 2 connectors up to each other, you'll be able to see that, and you'll know instantly, well, our problem is not our computer, it's not the interface, it's not something weird in the driver configuration. We simply have a bad cable, and you're able to identify it perfectly by looking at that configuration. If you wanted to really view it, you could see it by just bringing up your cable. This should match on your cable the way that it's set up. So you should be able to take that 568B and line them up and see that pin 1 is white and orange, pin 2 is orange, pin 3 is white and green. It's kind of difficult to see, but there is a green right here. If I moved my graphic, let's move my graphic out of the way, you can see there is green right there in that connection. Then we have blue, solid blue. That's definitely solid blue. Blue and white, definitely see that. Solid green. There is a brown and white, and you can see some of the brown that's in there, and then there's a solid brown. So looking at the back of the cable is an important test of what this is wired for. You should be able to visually look at these cables and know exactly how they're set up. In fact, I should have a question months from now that just takes a picture of a cable and says, what's wrong with this? And you should be able to answer that one. Just another thing you could maybe try yourself. A little labbing you can do by putting your cables together and really seeing how they are wired. In fact, grab an Ethernet cable you might have sitting around. Is it wired for T568A or is it wired for T568B? You should be able to look at it and tell me. So get very good at that, and this will be very easy if you see a question like this on the exam. So 4 and 6 is what we were looking for. And indeed, 4 and 6, if you look at the picture that we have, was indeed set up wrong. Those were set up as green and blue. They really should have been blue and green, respectively, and that would have got your system back up and running. You'll notice that the question also, another little aside that might help you, if you're connecting up a gigabit connection, you need all 8 of these pins. If you don't have all 8 of these pins correctly set up, but you do have pins 1, 2, 3, and 6 set up properly, then you'll be able to at least have 100 megabit connectivity. Now, in this case, we did not have those set up properly, which is why the cable wasn't working at all. And that should have been a clue for you to be able to do that. So make sure you are familiar with the pins, how you would connect them. You don't necessarily need to know how to physically crimp a cable, but you need to understand once one has been crimped, what do those pins reference? How are they connected? And have I got them in the right connection types? Might be useful if you're working through all of this. That was a great answer. 57% of you got that one absolutely correct, which means you knew how those wires are set up. Well done with that question. Let's do another one, shall we? Next one on our list is this question that asks, an organization has just completed a product launch and the costs for their cloud systems increased dramatically over the last month. Which of the following would best describe this situation? Is this rapid elasticity, high availability, metered service, internal cloud, or file synchronization? This is one where you really do have to find the best answer that you might have in this list. The question asks, an organization has just completed a product launch and the costs for their cloud systems increased dramatically over the last month. Which of the following would best describe this situation? Is it rapid elasticity, high availability, metered service, internal cloud, or file synchronization? See if you know what the answer is by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You will instead go into the link that you see there to answer this particular question. Maybe some of you have been in this situation. I know I have, where I have launched something on the cloud and then I got the bill and it was a surprise. Why was it a surprise? That is effectively the answer I'm looking for on this particular question. See if you happen to know what the best answer might be. Now, the reality here, and you'll see this on the exam as well, some of these answers, multiples of these answers, could be the reason. But that wasn't the question. The question asked, which of the following would best describe this situation? So make sure there's nothing, this question is self-contained. There's nothing hidden behind the scenes. You don't have to guess that something else happened. You should always take a question at face value. Make sure you are familiar with that so that you know exactly what is being asked of you. Don't pretend that you know something else that's going on as a backstory. There is no backstory. You have to absolutely know what these answers are. Let's see if you know this one. The question again asks, an organization has just completed a product launch and the costs for their cloud systems increased dramatically over the last month. Which of the following would best describe this situation? Is it rapid elasticity, high availability, metered service, internal cloud, or file synchronization? Let's find out what you answered. 66% of you say the answer is a metered service, but a quarter of you said the answer is rapid elasticity. Now we're down to immediately went to single digits. 5% said high availability, 3% say internal cloud, and only 1% said file synchronization. One of the things about cloud services is they tend to fit into two categories. It's either a flat fee, regardless of how much you use, or it's a fee that changes depending on how much you use. We refer to this as a metered or non-metered service. A non-metered service is a flat fee. You simply pay one price. So for example, if you have Dropbox, for example, you pay one price every month and you can store as much up to a limit, I think 2 gig or 5 gig or whatever the current limit is on that service. And you can put files there, remove files, you can transfer files, and do as much of that as you want throughout the month. Or you could maybe only upload once and you're done throughout the month, and you're billed exactly the same. With a metered service, you are billed based on how much you use, which is great. If you use a little bit of the cloud, you only pay a little bit. As you use more of the cloud, you pay for more of it. And in this question, it is a product launch. So this organization has introduced a new product. That probably means they're sending out lots of emails. There's a lot of people using this new product. When anybody introduces a new product, a lot of people suddenly start using it, at least initially. And because of that, you're going to have to pay a little more if you're using a metered cloud service. And that's why 66% of you said, yep, that's what you ran into. You used more of the cloud, you pay for more of the cloud. That is exactly what a metered service is. Now, 25% of you said rapid elasticity. Rapid elasticity is a mechanism, a characteristic of cloud-based services that allow you to build out more of the cloud as you are using it. So if you hit a limit or a particular level of use, you can automate a process of building out more application instances and simply making the cloud bigger and bigger and bigger as your customer base grows also along with it. But this question had nothing to do with deploying new services, with having additional servers added. All it said was they did a product launch, then they got a bigger bill. So there was nothing in the question that pointed to being able to add more services onto this. All we had was available capacity, and we were simply using the capacity that was there. And because we were using that additional capacity, we were paying for that additional capacity. So in this particular case, because there was no mention of building out additional application instances or additional growth as this went up, and of course, rapid elasticity works the other direction. As things calm down, it removes and deletes all of those additional instances that you no longer need. So that's a really good example of why rapid elasticity would not be the best description of the situation, and metered service is a much better description of this situation. Of course, rapid elasticity, if that was working, if that was in place, could certainly have caused this, just as high availability might be, just as file synchronization might be. But those are not the best descriptions of this particular issue. So make sure you understand the nuances of these cloud-based services so you know exactly what you will be faced with on the actual exam. And of course, our video goes into details with this, so you can go through our entire section on cloud services and learn a lot more about what's expected of you on the 220-1101 or the 220-1201 exam. This question applies to both of those. One of the things that people have found once they have now transitioned over into the 1200 series, or they've started studying and they've started with the 1200 series, is there's a lot of content. We expect that there will be approximately 137 videos left over just with, as we did on the 1101. We have probably about that many going to show up on the 1201 because not much has changed between those. And we have course notes for our previous exams. You'll find those at professormesser.com/1101 notes, but we also have 1200 series notes here as well. I'd like to show you those. I don't have them up on a slide, but I'll show you them live. These are the 1201 notes. They are full and complete along with my 1202 notes. So we have course notes for you that will tell you everything you need to know. This is a detailed breakdown of everything that was in every video, all of the important text, all of the important graphics, all of the important charts. So for example, if we go to section 3, look, there's our charts right here for our wiring. It's in the notes. We tell you all about those standards, why we have those standards there, along with other pieces of information that are critical for this particular exam. This can be extremely useful if you are trying to get a summary of everything you need to know on the exam. Simply visit professormesser.com, choose the option, the menu at the top for the 1101 or the 1201, depending on the notes that you need. And you have the choice on that webpage to also decide whether you want the digital edition that you just saw on my screen or the physical edition, which is the book. If you get the physical edition, that particular book is available and gives you access to the digital edition right away. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered to you through the Postal Service, you can, of course, download and start reading through the digital PDF immediately. That's all on the Professor Messer website, professormesser.com. And, of course, There's the 1101 course notes, which are very similar in style and structure, but contain information that is specific to the 1101 and the 1201. And there's 1201 notes and 1101 notes. So you've got both types that you could access depending on which version of the exams you're planning to take. Of course, you should always keep in mind you need to choose study materials that match the version of the exam that you are taking. So make sure if you take the 1101 that you get the 1101 notes. And if you take the 1201 or you're planning to take the 1201, make sure you take the 1201 notes. They are very similar between each other, but there are differences, and there are enough differences that you could miss some questions on your exam. So I don't want you to study with the wrong materials. Make sure you get the right materials when you're doing all of your studies. Let's do another question that applies to both the 1101 and the 1201, shall we? Next on our list is this question, and it asks, a technician is troubleshooting a VoIP application by measuring SNR. Which of the following would be best associated with these measurements? Would this be jitter values, available bandwidth, wireless interference, default route, or latency statistics? Those are the 5 options available. The question again asks, a technician is troubleshooting a VoIP application by measuring SNR. Which of the following would be best associated with these measurements? Would this be jitter values, available bandwidth, wireless interference, default route, or latency statistics? If you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA to answer this question. I'll also remind you that you can submit a question for our second hour at any time during this live stream by going to that same link, professormesser.com/QA. There's a little tab at the top of your screen, and you can click over there and put in any question you would like us to consider in the second hour after show. Just a little something you might want to do as we're going through this. Maybe something pops into your mind. You could submit a question anytime you'd like. You do not have to wait for the after show to submit your questions. I can't wait that long. I'll forget it by the time we get there. I had a question for you. I don't know what that question was, and then it's gone. And then, of course, you'll remember later tonight when it's too late. So put it in by hitting that tab at the top by going to professormesser.com/QA. A lot of you put your questions in very fast on this one. I never know if it's because we think we know what the answer is or if we really do know what the answer is. I don't look at the answers prior to us doing this. So there is a little bit of work that I could go and peek at them, but I think it's better. It's more of a surprise if we all learn at the same time, right? So let's see how we did with this question. It asks, a technician is troubleshooting a VoIP application by measuring SNR. Which of the following would be best associated with these measurements? Is this jitter values, available bandwidth, wireless interference, default route, or latency statistics? Let's close our poll and see how we did with this one. Oh, we're a little torn. Everybody put their answers in very quickly, but 39% of you said it's jitter values. 30% say it's wireless interference. It's almost a tie for first place. Then it's almost a tie for second place because 16% of you say latency statistics and 14% of you said available bandwidth. And then we have in last place here with a little 2% is default route. Well, anytime you see SNR, this is referring to signal to noise ratio. This is a measurement that determines on this particular medium that we are using, this communications channel that we are using, how much of this communication is signal, which is good, and how much of this communication is noise, which is bad. So it's nice to have a very big ratio here. Usually this is given to you as a ratio like 5-to-1 or 10-to-1, which means we have 5 times the amount of signal as we have noise, or 10 times the amount of signal as we have noise if it's 10-to-1. What you don't want is a 1-to-1. You don't want just as much noise as you have signal. That will make communication very difficult. Well, you're thinking to yourself, where's all this noise coming from? We don't have noise so much on an wired Ethernet connection. And you would be right. Most of the time, you're getting this noise on a wireless connection. Anytime you see SNR and you're working through it, this is one of those situations where wireless interference is what you would be measuring. And you can see on my screen is a measurement of the wireless communication. The green is good signal. The red is bad noise. So you can start to see visually, you can almost figure out from here, what is this, a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 that we see on this particular network. These noises come from many different places. That makes it more of a challenge. Wireless is susceptible to so many different issues. It might be a light. It might be a generator. It might be a microwave oven in the break room. You just never know what this could be related to. So SNR, that signal to noise ratio, is an important one to consider. This is a topic you have to know for both the 1101 and the 1201. Obviously, the 1201, you have it in section 5.5, troubleshooting networks. For the 1101, it's also in the troubleshooting networks video for having a look at this. Here's a better view of this. You can see lots of good green signal. That's what we were hoping to see, and very little of the noise. If we had more red here than green, we'd be in big trouble. And obviously, if you move farther and farther and farther away from the access point, you will get more noise than you have signal because your signal's naturally dropping. I guess maybe you won't get more noise, but you'll get less signal. And so your ratio tends to get closer and closer to each other as you move away from the access point. Another one of those useful bits of information that even if you don't have a graph, you can often get an SNR value from the wireless adapter statistics in your operating system. So you might be able to troubleshoot things that way as well. So since we know now that this is wireless, we know that wireless interference is what we were dealing with. So the 30% of you in purple here were the ones that got this one right. 39% of you was a larger number. The plurality of you chose jitter values, but SNR doesn't measure jitter. Jitter is a measurement of how often data, or frames in this case, are being delivered to an interface. So if there's more of a gap between these frames, there's more of a latency or delay between frames, then your jitter values are larger. As that gap gets smaller between frames, the jitter value gets much smaller and decreases quite a bit. The thing that's interesting in this jitter is it's a good measurement for voice and real-time communication to tell you the quality of the application that you're using. But it has nothing necessarily to do with SNR. SNR is a wireless thing. And of course, you could be using voice over IP applications over a wireless connection, and SNR is going to tell you how good the wireless signal is, but it will tell you nothing about how often a frame arrives for your particular interface. Same thing applies to latency statistics. Effectively, jitter values are latency statistics, just a very specific kind of latency statistic. So it would not be either one of those. Would also not be available bandwidth. Signal to noise ratio does not describe how much bandwidth is in use at any particular time. You'll need different measurements for that. And default route is a TCP/IP measurement, not really even a measurement, it's a configuration setting. So obviously the 2% of you, very low number, not many people chose that one. It was pretty far off the beaten path for this particular question. The answer that we were looking for was, in this case, the one that not a plurality of you chose. It's the one that 30% of you chose. It would be wireless interference, SNR, signal to noise ratio. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to renew your certification. This is just one of them. And one of the things that I would like to be able to do is send you this email, but you have to follow these instructions to receive the email. If you do not follow these instructions, you do not receive the email. It's really that simple. So what you want to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link on both of those places. You can choose either one of them. They take you to the same place. And you can click that. It will bring up a form. Put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2025 Core 1. I think I got that right. June 2025 Core 1. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, please put the super secret code words of the month: wireless interference jitter values. That's a few words you have to put in there. You don't have to put anything else in there, but please put that on a line by itself. If you wanted to also add information in there about what your studies are taking place, if you're renewing this, when you got your certification to begin with. I love to hear the backstories on these, and I'm the one reading through every single one of these. So I like to sometimes get the feedback. I'm not able to reply back to all of these because we get hundreds of these every month, but I do like to read through them, and I appreciate those of you that have added things to that email. You should make my day better because it kind of fills in a lot of the gaps I have when I'm sitting here alone in a dark room trying to create content. It's nice to see where what's happening once I put this out into the world and what you're doing with it. So again, if you want to earn that CEU, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put June 2025 Core 1. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, wireless interference, jitter values. I think I got that right. I think we did. So if you have no idea what a CEU is, this probably does not apply to you. It's a continuing education unit credit that is only provided once you have passed your exam or have one of these certifications. So if you're working towards your very first IT certification, none of that applied to you. It was a huge waste of time for you. I apologize. There are a lot of people here that are waiting. And later on, once you pass your exam, you can come back and watch this offline because I take submissions offline as well. You don't have to be here live to earn that CEU. You can certainly do that offline. Let's do another question. This is also a question that applies to both the 1101 and the 1201 exam. This question asks, which of the following is associated with security during the Bluetooth pairing process? I was barely able to say that. Which of the following is associated with security during the Bluetooth pairing process? A little bit easier. When you do that, is the answer strong password, personal identification number, full disk encryption, public key infrastructure, or biometrics? It's one of those. If you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your question. See if you know lock in your answer to this question. Again, the question asks, which of the following is associated with security during the Bluetooth pairing process? Is it a strong password, a personal identification number, full disk encryption, public key infrastructure, or biometrics? Submit your answer by visiting the link on your screen. This is where we bounce back. Do we recover from that last question right now? It's very possible that we may. Let's see how we do with this one. Fill in what you believe the answer is. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. I think that most people will probably have gone through this process before, don't you think? They may remember what they did when they went through this process. You do it very often, it just becomes standard, kind of a natural thing you do every time you step through pairing a Bluetooth device. The problem is you don't tend to do it a lot. Once you pair it the first time, you're done. You never have to pair it again unless for some reason you hit the wrong button and unpair it. Then pair it and pair it, the pairing of it. There we go. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, which of the following is associated with security during the Bluetooth pairing process? Is it a strong password, a personal identification number, full disk encryption, public key infrastructure, or biometrics? 87% say it's personal identification number. Ooh, I hope that's right. 7% of you, immediately single digits, is public key infrastructure. 5% of you say strong password. 1% of you say full disk encryption. And no percent of you say biometrics. I thought everybody jump on the biometrics one. Biometrics is B. Bluetooth is B. Biometrics is cool. Nope, that's not what you choose. 87% of you chose a personal identification number. So let's say that we were going to pair something using Bluetooth. Here's our Bluetooth connection. This works the same whether you're on Android, iOS, Mac OS, Windows, Linux, or really anything else. The pairing process is the pairing process to be able to make that happen. So the first thing you have to do is make sure that both of the devices are in a discoverable mode. Sometimes the device is set this way by default. Sometimes you actually have to push a button that says, put this into a discoverable mode. You'll have to check the documentation of your device to know exactly what you would do. And it should suddenly, once it's in a discoverable mode, it pops up as, oh, do you want to connect to this? and you could select it from what will probably be a list of multiple devices these days. Bluetooth seems to be everywhere we go. So this is when we have to choose exactly the device you want to connect to. The reason that we have some type of authentication is because there are all of these devices out there. What if you selected the wrong device? What if there were lots of very similar devices, but you happen to choose the wrong one? Well, you'll need to know the specific personal identification number associated with that Bluetooth device so that you can type that in so that it syncs up. This way, the device you're pairing this Bluetooth device to, you really know you're connecting to the right Bluetooth device because you're using the right personal identification number. So that's another one that becomes pretty important. Once you do that, you're connected. You can communicate back and forth. You can test it, and you'll never have to pair this again. Cross your fingers. Never's a strong word, isn't it? We've all been there in Bluetooth where suddenly we have to pair this again. Sometimes a software update occurs. Sometimes you hit the wrong button and you accidentally unpair it. Maybe you got a new phone. You get a new phone even when you download and recover from the backup and it looks identical to your existing phone on the screen, but you find you have to repair the new Bluetooth to all of those Bluetooth devices that you have used previously. So that is the answer. We want to use a personal identification number. Boy, did we bounce back. This is a good one. 87% of you got that one. Absolutely correct. That's the answer we were looking for. You've done this Bluetooth thing before. That's, of course, the answer that you would choose for Bluetooth. And again, that is a question that does apply to both the 1201 and the 1101 exams. You're covering this both ways. Speaking of questions that are good for both exams, here's another one. This next question asks, a technician is, I didn't even put this one in my list. I might skip this one. I don't have this one as a question that I added into the Vevox. I'm looking behind the scenes. It's a live stream, everybody. It's the way it works. Think of this one for next week. Let's skip over it. It's server message block, of course. In fact, let's go over this one. Since I don't have it online, we'll simply do this. Why not? A technician is capturing network traffic from a Windows Share file transfer. What port number should be used for the traffic filter? And the ones that I have available to you, well, you should just know it. It's a fill in the blank. I don't even have options for you. And in this case, in the very rare occasion that you have joined us on this live stream, if you know the answer, put it in the chat room. So all of you that have always wanted to put an answer into the chat room, now is the one and only time I will ever allow you to put an answer in the chat, which you probably saw on the screen I put in there, but that's okay. If you didn't see it on the screen, pretend you didn't. Just put in what you think the answer might be. And a lot of you are putting these in. This is 25 is a good guess. A lot of people putting 445. Some folks put in 443. SMB seems to be coming up quite a bit. And some of you are even saying, you're giving me not only the port number, you're giving me the protocol. A little bit of a flex. All right, I see you. That's what's happening. 445 SMB. Some of you are putting also TCP 445, which would actually be more correct than SMB 445, right? I'll take either. There's no more correct. It's just correct, right? You're no more or less correct. We're all trying to figure all of this out. 21. I like 21. 21 was one of the answers I put on the one that you didn't ever see. I think 21 is a good answer. It's not a correct answer, but I like where you're thinking with this. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Well done with the 389. 389, not quite there. How about 3389? That was another one I had on the answer of the slide you will never see. It was 3389. I like that I did this. A lot of you have already seen my big block of cheese. I get a lot of emails about this one slide, by the way. People are asking me, why is there a cheese on a slide that talks about server message block? Well, I got to tell you, people, they can't all be winners. That's really what this is. It's a block of cheese, and this is server message block. Oh, granted, not exactly the tie-in I want, but sometimes they just don't hit. And in this case, this one has not hit for like 10 years, but I refuse to change it. I am taking it. I accept the poor quality of the joke, and I just went with it. And you have to just join me inside of all of this. Whenever you're using Microsoft Windows and you're sharing a file, you're printing to a network printer, you're transferring information from your computer to a network share, maybe you have a user drive, drive H is on some Windows server somewhere, that is always using a protocol known as SMB, Server Message Block. SMB has been around forever. It actually has been around since before Windows. It's also known as a Common Internet File System, CIFS. You'll often see it written that way. So Microsoft didn't necessarily create this from scratch. They did enhance a number of features and capabilities within the protocol, and they call it Server Message Block. It sends a block of data from one place to the other. Back in the day, back in early versions of Windows, this is back in the Windows 3.1, Windows XP days, I believe, we didn't have necessarily the luxury of TCP/IP. In fact, the very first editions of Windows Server was a product from Microsoft called Windows LAN Manager, LAN, Local Area Network Manager. LAN Manager was the precursor to Windows Server. Think of it that way. Think of it as the very early versions of Windows Server. LAN Manager did not communicate via TCP/IP because nobody used TCP/IP. What? Nobody used TCP/IP in their workspace? Nobody used TCP/IP at home? Nobody used TCP/IP. We just weren't familiar with it. We often would use IPX, or we used some type of protocol that was down at layer 2 of the OSI model. And the protocol that we used to be able to communicate to LAN Manager was a protocol called NetBIOS. And NetBIOS would simply communicate. We didn't need IP addresses. There was no subnetting. There was no subnet mask. There was no default gateway. There was no DNS. You just said, I want to communicate, and it did it. Everything was automatic behind the scenes. NetBIOS was that way. IPX was that way. Obviously, this came with a number of caveats. Anytime anything is automatic on the network, you can automatically think in your head, automatic means overhead. There was obviously something that had to happen across the wire to make the automatic part automatic. And so what we would use is NetBIOS as the protocol to make that happen. And there were flavors of NetBIOS that you would use across the network to make that happen. But what we found is when we started using TCP/IP, we still wanted to transfer this Windows traffic back and forth. So what we did was take the NetBIOS traffic and we encapsulated it within TCP/IP. It was kind of clunky, sort of like putting a hat on a hat kind of scenario. We're kind of squeezing in. It's the Russian doll. So we're taking the NetBIOS and putting it in a bigger doll and sending it on its way, and then taking the Russian doll apart and pulling the NetBIOS out of it kind of scenario. Every time we'd send it across, we had to put it in this envelope, send it across as IP, and then take the envelope apart just to get to the data. So a little bit of overhead associated with that. There were also other protocols associated with this. You'll notice only 137 and 139 are listed here because those are the ones that are listed in the exam objectives for the 1201 exam. These days, however, you probably will not see devices using this encapsulated form of server message block using NetBIOS inside of an IP packet. Why don't we just send it over IP like we do everything else? That would be brilliant, wouldn't it? And indeed, Microsoft agreed with you because they began creating a version of SMB that communicated directly without having this NetBIOS, without having to encapsulate everything. It was a native IP configuration. There was a lot of work that went into creating this, but this is what our modern versions of Windows will use. It will use TCP 445, which I call a NetBIOS-less version of SMB, and being able to use that. That is direct SMB communication using TCP without any type of NetBIOS stuck in the middle of it. You might still see older systems on a network, and you might take a packet capture and see that it has both IP and NetBIOS in the same packet. You're wondering, why is it doing that? And then you find out it's some old machine that they're still running for some reason that they probably shouldn't be, but that's what it's doing. So this is the beauty of today's modern data centers, is we always see the pretty glass windows and we see all the blinky lights inside. What you don't see is in the far back, really behind a panel, maybe behind a solid door, is all of the old legacy equipment that somebody still has to keep up and running. And it's in every single data center you will go to. So don't be surprised if you do see a situation where there is UDP 137 or there is TCP 139 or there are some of those older protocols in use because they just have these older systems in use. That's what you would find. In this case, that is the answer. Well, that's the answer you were looking for. I don't have the screen. See, Bluetooth. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help me at all. The answer is indeed TCP 445. You answered that one very well in our chat room, being able to just throw out what the answer might be. And now I think we know a little bit more, maybe too much, about the history of NetBIOS and server message block and what you would expect to see if you were to look at it on the network. That was the answer we were looking at. Well done with that one. Hopefully that's given you some ideas of things that you can think about for your exam. We, of course, want you to understand every exam objective that you might run into, so make sure you are familiar with those. One way that you can understand what is expected of you is to get the objectives. These exam objectives are extremely useful. I'm going to bring up my set of objectives on the screen so you can see it. We've got it right here. Let's see if I can bring up a view of this that makes sense. There we go. So here are my exam objectives for the 1201 exam. You can download these directly from the CompTIA website or just look for CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you get the latest versions of these. They tell you about the exam and what's expected of you. They give you all 5 of the domains. Notice they are identical to the 1101 domains, although the percentages have changed slightly between the exams. You can certainly get those. And you have the entire set. This is domain 1 and everything you need to know. Domain 2 and everything you need to know. For example, you can see here, we've got a great deal of information in here that we need to know for all of these. The networking side, more networking, the hardware data, the 4.0, 5.0, all the domain information is in here. And for the people that are always asking me about abbreviations, there's an acronym list in the objectives themselves. So if you wanted to learn more about these acronyms, or you missed one, or somebody's referencing an acronym and you don't know what it is, there's your list. I would not recommend simply memorizing acronyms and definitions. I think it's more important for you to memorize acronym, definition, and what this is good for, how you would use this. Why is this important? There's always more to this. And on your exam, you will never be asked, what does HDD stand for? And then you've got to come out, oh, that's hard disk drive. They will never ask you a question like that on your exam. They will always use that acronym as part of a question and just assume you know what it is and how it works. So it's a good example. In fact, that's how we use it in normal parlance, in the normal use. That's what we do. So that's exactly what you will probably do as well. Have a look at what those differences are. Make sure you get a copy of those objectives. They are very, very useful. Again, you can go to professormesser.com/objectives or just go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, and you will know exactly what to do. Well, we don't really have a good view of this screen, do we, to be able to see everything that is here? Let me see if I can move myself out of the way. We do one of these live streams once a month. We have once a month for each exam. So we have a Core 1 live stream, a Core 2 live stream, a Network Plus live stream, and a Security Plus live stream. You can see for June, we have another A+ study group already scheduled for June the 12th. That's in 2 days. That's Thursday. So if you like this live stream and you want to come back for the 1202, I will have 1202 questions for you. On Thursday, we'll do all of this again. We aren't done, of course, today. We have our after show. Stick around for that coming up. I also set dates for July. Currently, July 8th and 10th are scheduled for the next A+ study groups once we're through the month of June. I also have a Network Plus and Security Plus study group this month, and I've also scheduled my Network Plus and Security Plus study groups for next month as well. So we have a lot to go through there. If you always want to know what's going on, you can always check the calendar on our website or check the calendar on Discord. We, of course, aren't done yet. We've got more available. I've asked you questions for an hour. It's time for you to ask me questions. That's what we're going to do in the after show coming up immediately after this. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch anything. It happens in about 10 seconds after we finish this live stream. And we'll just stop and start from where we are right now. Don't forget about our course notes. We've got some available for the Core 1 1101 and the Core 1 1201. Make sure you get the right one for the exam that you're planning to take. And of course, you can follow us everywhere on social media. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us on. /YouTube, /Discord, /LinkedIn, /Facebook, /Twitter, /X, whatever it happens to be, hopefully we're there. And if we're not there and you would like us to be there, let me know. Maybe I should get an account running on that live stream, maybe on that social media site so that you can get questions from that one as well. I'd like to be where you are. That would be a great way to handle this. Well, that brings us to the end of the first hour. That went by really, really fast, didn't it? But stick around for the second hour. Many more questions to come. You're able to ask anything you would like in that second hour. I don't know that I will answer anything that you ask, but I'll try to. Feel free to join us for that coming up in just a few seconds. Thank you for joining us in this first hour. We do enjoy this so much, and we will see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, time to take a sip. One moment. We'll see how well that works for us. And it's time to start the after show, everybody. There we go. Thank you so much for being there in the first hour. Now is the part of the show where I have no idea what's going to happen. It's correct. I have no earthly idea what happens next. And that's because this is the part of the show where I haven't done any planning at all of any kind. That's by default. That is exactly the way this is supposed to go. In the second hour, I would like to answer your questions. And I can answer your questions by you submitting them to me using the same link that we have done this whole time. You can go to professormesser.com/QA. There's a tab at the top of the screen where you can select to send me a question. I already have a number of questions in here that I will go through, and you simply use that same link that we used before. So I know there were a lot of questions that went by in the chat room as we were doing this live. I don't have a way to stop and write all of these things down. So if you would like to submit that question in this online system, it helps me quite a bit. I can parse through them a little bit better when I'm going through these questions. Boy, there's a lot of questions in here. Let's talk about, I've gotten, 75 of the questions that you've submitted, and a bunch that went through in the study group were about practice exams. This study group is for the 220-1201 exam. Obviously, there's also a 1202 exam. And as you've probably seen in the past, we have had practice exams for the 1101 and 1102. So it only makes sense that we would have practice exams for the 1201 and 1202, and we certainly will. Those practice exams are already in production. We're already working on them, along with the remaining few videos that we have left on the Core 2 exam. Fortunately, all of our production work, all of our live production work for this series has been completed. So effectively, all of my work is in the can. I've already got everything recorded, and they're already on a flash drive that's down here. In fact, if you're watching earlier, I've got these flash drives down here. Can't really see them very well. That on the bottom right, you can see the Cylon that's there circling around. There's actually two of them. There's one just above it too. You can't see from that angle. Those are recording the video of this, and I record them onto SSDs. So I've got everything recorded. I'm just in the process of editing them all out. So it goes really fast at this point. There's not a lot of delays involved in this part of the production. We go right through them. So you'll start seeing a lot of videos added to YouTube in the coming week or so. So if you're not, this is your opportunity. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, this is a great time to do it. It's also very much appreciated when you subscribe, because I have my YouTube rep that I talk to. We talk about, am I putting the right things out there? Do we have the content you need? Are there things we can do to make this easier? In fact, some of you like using the YouTube course feature on YouTube where you can see which videos you've watched already. So I have moved our 1201 and our 1202 courses into more than just a playlist. They're now in a course list on YouTube, which is just sort of an enhanced playlist. It still has playlist functionality, but it has additional functionality. And so you can see some of those on our YouTube channel. You can, of course, go to professormesser.com/YouTube, and you'll see the list of all of these on our homepage. So there's some nice features, I think, in the course capabilities. So another thing that you can find that is a little bit different now that we have updated those on the website. And there, of course, those practice tests will be right behind. As soon as we finish editing the videos, the practice tests will be right behind it. Now, fortunately, there was not a lot of differences between the Core 1 exam and the Core 2 exam. or I should say the 1101 exam and the 1102 exam. In fact, I want to show you on our website. I'm going to go to a page. Let me bring this up so you're able to see it. So if you were to go to our website and look at the big index of 1201 videos, this is them. All of the videos are listed here for every exam topic and what we do. And if you look at the very top of this list, there's a little blurb here that says, what's new in the 220-1201 exam? Click here to read through our detailed breakdown. And this is the most detailed breakdown you will ever see for a comparison between exam versions. I say that because I've read every other comparison that exists on the internet. And I thought it's missing something. We're missing more detail that people are often asking about. So I wrote an article that details all of this. You can see there's our Gantt chart we saw earlier that describes the overlap period. But I also created things like this chart, which compares the number of objectives on one exam with the topics on the other exam. So we're not just comparing numbers, we're actually comparing what was dropped and what was added. The left circle is the 1101. The right circle is the 1201. I realize my head's in the way. There we go. And what's in the middle is identical between the exams. So yellow and blue make green, right? So we've got 396 objectives on the 1101, 391 on the 1201. They're basically the same size. And indeed, you can see here, the circles are effectively very similar to each other. Although if you measured it, this one is 396 pixels high. This one's 391 pixels high. These are to scale. I was very specific with this, but it's almost the same amount of content. But you can see everything in yellow has been dropped from the 1201. 58 of the objectives are no longer part of that. So if you have 1101 materials, you're missing the new information that was added. 49 objectives were added to the 1201, and you're learning things that will never be asked of you. That's one of the reasons I tell you, always use study materials that match the version of the exam you plan to take so that you are really studying the right ones. Now, which one of these do you take? The 1101 retires on September 25th. If you are just starting your studies, you should be studying the 1200 series exams. If you've been studying for months and you've already completed the 1101 or 1102 and you pass that exam, then you must pass the other 1101 or 1102 exam before September 25th. So you should still be studying the 1100 series. And as I mentioned before, whether you pass both the 1100 series exams or you pass both the 1200 series exams, the resulting certification is identical. There is no difference in the A+ certification you get. I know some people like to study the new one because it's new, but in reality, there are fewer study materials available for the new one. It just came out in March. So that's a good example of there are advantages and disadvantages to both. That is an advantage and disadvantage. And one of the things that I go through is I go through the 1201 exam, and everything that's in that yellow part that was dropped from the exam, I break it down by domain and subdomain. So these are the things that were dropped: GSM versus CDMA, PRL updates, two-factor authentication, account setup. In domain 2, you no longer have to know DHCP ports. You no longer have to know specific 802.11 standards. When are you going to run into 802.11a or b? You're never going to see it. It's so long gone. Why would you need to memorize it? And CompTIA agrees. So you no longer have to remember those things. So you can go through this list and you'll see exactly what was dropped. Well, that's great, but what's new? I detailed that as well. Here are the new topics on the 1201 and things you should know. Things like the 6 gigahertz wireless band, things like DHCP exclusions, things like USB-C video cables. These are things that are important to know, and they're all listed in this document. This document is all on that main screen of our 1201 videos so that you can find it, or simply look for Professor Messer differences 1101, 1201, and you will find it right away. That probably answers a large number of the questions that came in this time. So hopefully that takes care of a big chunk of you that wanted to know, what's really different? Do I really need to get new study materials? Do I not really need to get new study materials? And the answer is you should always get study materials that match the version of the exam that you plan to take. So Let's go through some other questions that you have submitted. This one is from Taylor, and Taylor asks, hello, Professor. I'm still currently studying for the CompTIA Plus. One moment, please. But I worked as a contractor for desktop support since October of 2022. And my coworker told me that because I've been working for an entry-level job already, that I don't need to bother with the A+. Should I just skip it and start studying Network Plus material instead? That's a very common question we get. And my answer to this is your coworker planning to hire you? Because they seem to have a good set of requirements for you. And if they're not going to hire you, why are they telling you what to do? That is the problem that we often find ourselves in this industry, is we sort of sometimes do this backwards. I think people get so focused on certification that we kind of lose focus on, why am I doing this? Why am I going through this process of getting this certification? And indeed, that's where we should start in this. So whenever somebody says, what certification should I get? My answer is always not a certification. My answer is always, what are you trying to do? What's your goal? What is the next job that you want? What jobs are available in your area? What are the requirements for the entry-level IT positions that might be in your area? Or what are the requirements for the IT positions in your area that you are interested in and that you are qualified for? That's an important consideration too. A lot of people jump over to Security Plus because they say, I want a job working in IT security. But if you were to look at the job postings for IT security, you would find that those job postings have requirements that require 5 years in IT before you ever have accumulated the requirements they're asking for, which is pretty normal for an IT security position. IT security expects you to be able to understand operating systems, networking, and not just understand them, but have a very solid foundation. In some cases, a near expert level understanding of these technologies. How are you supposed to secure an operating system unless you understand how the operating system works? How are you supposed to troubleshoot and secure a network unless you understand how a network is connected, how it operates, and how these protocols are able to communicate back and forth? So there's a lot of work that takes place before you ever get the opportunity to submit an application for a security job. Now, there are some entry-level security jobs out there. I don't want to tell you not to go after these security positions, but they're very often a security operations center type job, a SOC. The security operations center are these large companies that have effectively a help desk that's just for security. And so for that reason, they will often have entry-level triage type help desk positions as part of that. That's a good way to get into security. It's not a pure security role, but it gets you in the door of security. And often that's what you need, is something that directs you or leans you in that direction for earning that particular job. So my recommendation for anybody who's trying to figure out, do I take the A+, do I take the Network Plus, do I take Security Plus, do I get CCNA, do I get a cloud position, do I get an Azure certification, do I get a Red Hat certification, there's a lot of options. But which one's the best? Well, what are employers asking for? Before we talk about what you want, it's not about you. Very often, it's not about you. Sometimes it is more about you than not. But when you're trying to get that first job in IT, when you're trying to get your foot in the door, it's a critical phase. I will tell you that once you get that first IT job, it is so much easier to kind of lean one direction or one technology over another because you're already in the company. But if you've not gotten that first IT job, my recommendation to you is take whatever you can get. Get your foot in the door. And that involves you understanding what employers would like you to have. Do they want you to have an A+? What does their job description say? Do they want you to have a Network Plus? What does their job description say? Do they want you to have a Security Plus? What does their job description say? So you can ask me, I won't be able to tell you. You can ask your coworker, they won't be able to tell you. You can ask anybody, nobody will be able to tell you what certification you should take because we aren't you. We don't know what your goals and objectives are, and we don't know what jobs are available in your area. I have a video that's in the YouTube video description of this video called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience, where I talk about things you should be doing to best position yourself to get that first job in IT. You're just out of school. You've never had an IT job before. What should you be doing? What certifications would you be looking at? In fact, I give you a step-by-step of here's the spreadsheet you should create and the research you should do to be able to determine what your next certification should be. And it's all in that video. It's a 30-minute video, which is a long video for me. As you know, I keep these videos tight. There's not a lot of dead air. I'm not repeating myself. It's a video. You can rewind. You can slow it down. You can make it go faster. There's things you can do. And so I in this video, I tried to put in everything I could possibly gather from my years of working in the IT industry, of being a hiring manager, of being on the other side, of being the systems engineer, looking for the job, of someone who's put together resumes, as someone who has evaluated resumes. I tried to take everything I knew and put it into that video. That's what I would recommend, Taylor. Have a look at that video. I think it will give you some ideas of things you can do to make the process a little bit easier and more directed so that you know the effort that you're putting in with these videos. And by the way, it's a lot of effort to get an IT certification, that you're using and going down the right road of getting the right certification for your specific requirements right now. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of things you can do and ideas that might help you. So that's my recommendation too, is to go that direction. Let's keep going through the questions that you have submitted. Wow, the time is just blown by. We've gone so fast through this whole thing and make this happen. So we will go through others of these. A lot of practice exams questions. I think we've gone through a number of, answered that one quite a bit and working through it. So for a lot of you were asking earlier, which version of the exam should you take? I think this is a good place to do a couple of things. First, congratulations to Freddie. Freddie says, I passed my 220-1101 exam last Friday. Wanted to share my gratitude for the work you and your team do to present the study material onwards to pass the 220-1102 and beyond. Of course, you're going to be doing certifications your entire IT career. So Freddie also writes, thank you, Professor. Well, Freddie, you are welcome. You are welcome, and you are welcome. And by the way, I didn't do the hard part. You did the hard part. It took the exam and passed it. Congratulations. It's always great to see. This is a very good example, though. Freddie now has 3 months to pass the 1102 exam. That's plenty of time to pass this 1102 exam. So if you are on kind of the same schedule as Freddie, then you're probably in the right place. But if you haven't even passed the first exam yet, we're getting 3 months away from retirement. I would recommend, if you're studying the 1101 or 1102 and you haven't passed one of those exams yet, that might be your cue to move over to the 1200 series. So another one of those things. Most importantly, Freddie, congratulations on the 1101. Some people tell me, some people believe, I don't know how true it really is for you, that the 1102 exam, the Core 2 exam, was easier for them than the Core 1 exam. In reality, I think it really comes down to what you're familiar with. If you've been using Windows for a very long time, the 1102 probably will be a little bit easier for you. But if you've been building your own computers for a very long time, the 1101 was probably easier. So it's all about context, isn't it? That's exactly the case here. Congratulations, Freddie. You are well positioned easily to pass that 1102 before the September retirement date. You will be A+ certified, just as A+ certified as anyone else. And congratulations so far. Best of luck. Let me know. Send me an email. Hit the Contact Us link on my website. Let me know when you pass the 1102 so I can celebrate along with you. Another one of those things that's great to hear. I like hearing those stories and working through them. It's helped so much to know what's going on out there and what you're doing with these. And it helps me understand where I should focus my efforts too. So there's always something that we can gain from that. There's a question on here. This is more of a product question, so we'll do it really quick. But this is from Henry, who asks, hey, are my practice exams, are the Professor Messer practice exams similar to the style/difficulty level of the CompTIA exam? And that is exactly how they have been designed. For those of you that have not seen my practice exams book, the practice exams are available both in this physical format and a digital format. They are practice exams. I only have them for the 1101 and 1102 currently. The 1201 and 1202 will be coming out shortly. So keep looking out for that on my website. But that's exactly how I designed these exams. I went around the website before I wrote these books. I went around the website, the internet. I looked at other websites. I looked at what exams were out there already, and I just wasn't happy with what I saw. I saw a lot of questions that were not written with the same style or the same tone as the actual exam. I saw questions that were completely out of scope for the exam. They were from an exam version 2 exams ago, and they were just put in there to help fill it up. They don't help at all. In fact, I see people describing some of those. That was a much harder exam than what you will get on the actual exam. Well, yeah, because they ask you questions that you won't be asked. Of course it's harder. They ask you topics that you've never heard before because they no longer exist. So yeah, I guess it was a bit harder than the actual exam. Shouldn't your practice exam be exactly the same difficulty as the actual exam? I think they should be. And so that's what we try to do with our practice exams, is make them exactly what you would find on the exam. So all of these that we have in here, we have 3 full practice exams in here, along with performance-based questions. So there's, things in here you need to be able to do. They're listed in this book. And we will have these available for the 1200 series as well shortly, as I mentioned. So yes, they are designed to have the same style. They are designed to have a similar feel and a similar flow, and they are designed to have the same difficulty level as the actual exam. So that is where those come from. Sometimes I will get messages from people after they took the exam, and they will send me a complaint and say, hey, I saw none of your practice exam questions on the actual exam. What good is that? I said, well, I think you may have come to the wrong place. If you were simply looking to cheat through the exam, that is not what this is. I write every single question in these exam books personally. They're not AI. They're not some third party that I hired to just fill up a book. I write every single question. How else am I going to be sure that every question was written in the same tone, the same style? I guess I could edit after the fact, but why would I spend my time editing after the fact when I could just write it to begin with? So I think that's valuable. And I think that's what makes our practice exams better than anything else that's available on the market. And I will stand by them 100% in that regard. So that hopefully gives you some perspective. And if you go to the exam and you think, what people have said is it sounded like a Professor Messer question, but was written with different topics. Well, that was by design. That's exactly how it's supposed to work, to have those there. Let's get more questions that you have submitted. Let's go through. This is a good one. This is a kind of niche, but I think it's useful for everyone to know. This is from my good friend Anonymous. Anonymous says, I have a low vision disability. I have an increasingly low vision disability myself. I scheduled my 1101 exam to be taken with accommodations next week, followed by the 1102 in early September. So far, this is exactly the process you should be taking for any type of accommodation or disability that you feel would apply here. And so that applies to many people with many different kinds of disabilities and things that they might need accommodation for. There's a process on the CompTIA website where you can submit a form to get additional time on the exam or additional accommodations on the exam that match whatever disability is that you're trying to work through. Anonymous continues, I feel confident about the exam, but I'm still a little nervous. By the way, that's exactly where all of us are. Do you have any advice for people with disabilities going into IT, and any tips on how to feel less nervous? Well, this is a topic that I have some familiarity with, not as good as others that I've worked with, but I've worked with a number of people in IT who have had one type of disability or another. I worked with one individual who had cerebral palsy. They were in a wheelchair. The only movement they really had was their finger. And they manned a help desk next to the other people in our company that were also talking at the help desk. and they were able to do everything they needed to do through voice. So they were able to talk to their computer. And this was a number of years ago. Now it's so much better from a voice communication being able to do this. And they were able to do everything they needed to do just by using their voice and a little joystick on their wheelchair, which was amazing. There are, of course, other types of disabilities. Some people are not able to see very well. This is anonymous, has a low vision disability. There are things you can do during the exam to help. Screen readers. Sometimes the accommodations allow you to have someone sitting with you to read things off or to help or move through the screens. It depends on what the disability is and how you do that. But there is a process on the CompTIA website. Let me see if I can find the exact place on the website. If you Google or search for CompTIA accommodations, that's what you're looking for, there is a screen that says, what are accommodations and how do I request one if eligible? And goes through the process of how you do that. So just check that out on the CompTIA website. I just Googled CompTIA accommodations. This was the very first link that came up. So if you're someone who thinks maybe this would apply for you, that is something that could help. And you can see that examples are extra testing time, a separate testing room, scheduled breaks during the exam. They want to make it as easy as possible for you to work through whatever accommodation you need. I've seen a lot of different kinds of accommodations, and they have a process in place to make sure that that will work and that happens the way that it should. The other part of that question was talking about people going into IT who have disabilities. What a great field to go into, because there's not a lot of heavy lifting, thankfully. There's not a great deal of menial type physical work. Well, although I've been there have been cases. Sometimes we have to set up a computer system or an entire room, a training room of computers. You're unloading boxes, you're putting things on top of each other, you're plugging in. There are some aspects of IT that may be physical, but the vast majority of IT is digital. It's you typing into a keyboard. It's you knowing what the problem is and being able to solve the problem online. It's doing a remote control session from wherever you happen to be in the world and correcting things on someone's computer without having to physically be at that computer. What better industry to be in if you have some type of disability? So I highly encourage you, if you have vision issues, if you have problems walking, if there's anything where you feel like you would not work well in a retail environment, you would not work well in a sales environment, but IT might be the perfect place for you. And this is one where technology enables so many different things these days. There's no better time in the history of IT to get a job working with someone who may have a disability, because you've now got tons of ways to enable you through voice, through different input controls, different output controls. We're starting to even see control of the computer just by having a sensor that's connected to you reading your brainwaves. So it's remarkable where this is going. You will probably see options available for yourself as well. So there's a nice subreddit I ran into one time talking about disabilities and IT, but I think for the exams, starting with their page that talks about accommodations would be a great way to work through the exam process, and then think about what you want to do as an industry. You can administer Linux servers, Windows servers. You can work with databases. You can work in the cloud. You can work in IT security. You could do forensics. All the things that we do in IT, you can do with a disability as well. There's ways to make it work and enable it for practically anybody out there. We just need to find out what you want to do and work your way through it. I also find that most employers, certainly larger employers, it tends to be better. But I find that most employers are also very good at providing those things that you might need to be able to do your job with those disabilities. In reality, the price of these things has really dropped as well. So why wouldn't an employer do it? They got to get you a desk and a monitor. Why not get you the voice software you need? It's an easy add-on. So another one of those things to consider. Hopefully that's given you some ideas of how we handle things in the IT world dealing with disabilities. And certainly you'll be better prepared. It sounds like you're all ready for your exams that way. Now, other people also know who are watching this, oh, I could get accommodations as well that might help me take these exams, get a job in IT, and be able to move up in my career as well. So perhaps we've launched something with that. Let's go through some more questions you have. How are we on time? We're good on time. Let's go through this piece of it. Here's a question. This is from Henry. Henry asks, does CompTIA give partial credit for the performance-based questions? As you saw today, we had 5 answers in our performance-based question. You could have gotten 3 of them right and 2 of them wrong. Do you get partial credit? It's a good question. Now, in the past, I've directed you to a specific page on the CompTIA website. Let's see if that page still exists after the CompTIA website change that occurred earlier last week. Let's see. CompTIA, the thing that I am looking for is frequently asked questions for performance-based questions. And in fact, they still have on their website performance-based questions, frequently asked questions. So let's see if the question they had before is still there. I'll bet it is. If you scroll all the way down, all I did was I literally searched for PBQ FAQ. Search for that's the first page that comes up. And the question in here asks, is partial credit given if I answer part of a performance-based question correctly? The answer is, there may be questions for which partial credit is offered. Well, they fixed the text that was in here. However, exam questions and their scoring are confidential, so no further information can be provided regarding which questions may offer partial credit. So the answer there is, maybe. A qualified maybe from the frequently asked questions. This is a frequently asked questions. It is not a frequent answered question, however. So the answer is, we might give you partial credit. We might not give you partial credit. It could go either way. We may or may not, and will not tell you if you got partial credit or not. That's the other part they don't put in here. You will never know if you get partial credit. So that's another example of you just never know. They're not going to tell you. It's a mystery of the universe that will die with all of us. We will end up never knowing if they gave us partial credit or not. In fact, we'll never know how they grade the exams. They never tell us. So that's a really good example of how you just don't know what that will be. But because they say so what you're saying is there's a chance, and I am. So fortunately, what I would like to believe is that if the performance-based question lends itself towards partial credit, like ours did today, I like to believe we get partial credit. That's what I'm going with. I'm going with the glass half full answer. Of course, it might be that CompTIA almost never gives partial credit, and maybe we never get partial credit. There's maybe one question where they ever get partial credit, and the other 30 questions you'll never see it. That could be true as well. We just don't know, and they're not going to tell us. So that's why I don't have an answer for you. The answer, as I mentioned, from CompTIA, the official word is maybe. Perhaps. A very qualified maybe, but a maybe nonetheless. So that they do tell you what you missed when you get your exam results, but they don't tell you what questions you missed. They tell you what domain and subdomain topic was missed during the exam. So they aren't tying back to an exact question. You may be able to remember, oh yeah, I did get a question about that topic. I wonder if that's the one I got wrong. That's basically the only type of feedback you get. But it does help if you end up not passing the exam, you at least get feedback on what topics you should study up for the next one and which ones you did poorly on this exam. So perhaps that gives you some insight as to which topics you should study for next time. So there is some use to that, but it's not going to tell you, here's the exact question that you answered, that was asked, here's what you answered, and here's what the right answer should have been. They will never give you that. You just will never get it. It's confidential, it's proprietary, and you can't disclose it. You can't talk about it. You sign a non-disclosure when you start the exam that you will never talk about that. So that's another one of those that is useful. Let's keep going through this list. Got a lot of good stuff here. People again asking about practice tests. Thank you. Keeping it real. Appreciate that. I think we answered that one over and over again today, so we're good with that one. This is sort of off topic for the A+, but not off topic for the after show. So I think this is a good one to ask. Again, from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, do you have practice PBQ questions inside of your Security Plus 701 practice exams? Yes, I don't have my practice exams book here for Security Plus. I'm looking behind me. It's not there, but it's very similar in style, structure, and form to our A+ practice exams book. And we have 3 practice exams in here and 5 performance-based questions on each practice exams. So this book contains 15 performance-based questions. My Security Plus book, also same structure, same format, same number. My Security Plus book also contains 15 performance-based questions for Security Plus. So the Security Plus book, so that means each exam is 90 questions. 5 of them are performance-based, 85 are multiple choice, and there's 3 of those in each book. Just so you know, numbers-wise, what's there. I do have that documented on the product information page, and there's a little video you can watch right next to it that shows you, demonstrates how to use the book. I know that sounded stupid. Sorry, I did not mean for that to sound that way. How do you use a book? After all, there's actually a way you use this book. It's in the video. That's all I'm going to tell you. So watch the video and you'll understand that I'm not really being demeaning. I'm actually describing little hooks, little tidbits, little interesting things we put in the book that will help you use it easier. So I think is great. How do you get your book from South Africa? You order it and put your address in South Africa and I send it to you. It's that easy. There, it will show you the price on shipping. If you're looking for the physical book, they'll show you the price on shipping during checkout. If you're getting the digital version, there's no shipping. Download it and use it right now. That easy. But I definitely recommend watching the video next to it on the product information page. That might help you a bit as you are stepping through and understanding more about how that particular process works and how to use the book. How do you use a book? A question I ask myself often. How does this work? Let's get more questions in. We have some time left. You guys got such good questions this month, by the way. Thank you for submitting them. More questions. This actually is a nice question that I saw come up earlier this month on Reddit. And I think it's one that a lot of us go through with really any IT certification exam. Again, from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, I'm just starting to study for both A+ exams. It seems like an overwhelming amount of information for someone who is a beginner in the IT world. I've been watching your videos for the past 6 months. I still feel like there's more to learn. Do you have any tips? So here's the thing. The A+ exams are an overwhelming amount of information for someone who's a beginner in the IT world. It's a lot of information. There's a ton of detail in these exams. Fortunately, the exams tend to be very wide, which means there's a lot of topics, but it doesn't tend to be super deep, which means a lot of detail for each one of those topics. But you still have to learn all of these different things. If you look at the 1102 and 1202 exams, there must be 30 or 40 command lines you need to know. That's a lot of hands-on that you need to go through. So sometimes there is a lot. It's just a lot. These exams have a lot. So what I always recommend, and I think this is a good idea for anybody studying an IT certification exam, is you will find that the certification exams tend to be self-contained rather than build all the way through the exam. I take this example. I took college calculus when I was in my studies. Took it twice. Guess why? Took college calculus. Still don't know why I do know they required you to take the course. That's why I took it. But why did I take it? I got a business degree. Have no idea why they made me go to calculus. Now I understand why they made me go. It was gatekeeping effort and it got more money out of me. Bottom line, we don't use calculus in business. I've never used calculus in IT. We barely use math in IT. Rarely, if ever. So math is not something that is heavy in the world of information technology. Computer science, yes. Information technology, not at all. We add, we subtract, sometimes we divide, sometimes we multiply. That is the extent of our math knowledge that we need. And by the way, I've found these amazing devices that can actually do the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division for you. It's even built into your phone. So it makes it very easy. The challenge, though, that you often run into with these is, how do you know what to study, and how do you break this down in a way that is digestible? Because if you just try to take all of this, you just shotgun one video after the other, you're not going to learn it. I really recommend going to the exam objectives, maybe starting with a single area. So here is section 1.0, mobile devices, and the subdomain is 1.1. Let's just do 1.1. Given a scenario, monitor mobile device hardware and use appropriate replacement techniques. And they give you batteries, keyboard keys, random access memory, hard disk drive, solid state drive, wireless cards. Whoa, already there's a lot of content. Just take one of these, battery. So let's talk about the batteries that are in a device. How do you replace them? How do you replace them in a device that's designed to be replaced? How do you replace them in a device that isn't designed to be replaced? What do you do with that? Once you understand that one, go to the next bullet. Keyboard/keys. Now, how do keyboards in a mobile device, I guess in this case it would be a laptop, how do you replace the keyboard in a laptop? Is it difficult? Is it easy? What do you usually find under the laptop? Well, I have information on all of that in my video. So focus on one bullet at a time. Don't even go through the whole video if you don't want to. Focus on that content. Maybe you also have a book. One of the things we often tell you when you're working towards your certification is that you should use the WRAP method, W-R-A-P. You should watch some videos, read a book, apply with some labs, and practice with practice exams. That is WRAP. No one, and especially me, has ever said, just watch the videos, you'll be fine. Many people do. Many people just watch the videos and go take the exam, and with the knowledge they already had and the work they put into understanding what was in the videos, they pass their exam. But that is a low percentage success rate. Your best percentage success is to use as many different study materials in different types of media as you can. This is what I've been saying since the very beginnings of doing this crazy experiment that we've been doing online. And we've been doing it for a while now. And I think that process is one that works the best. So once you read through this, you watch the video that talks about replacing a battery or replacing the keyboard. Now go read that section in your book. You have a good book, right? Go get a good book. That's the R in the WRAP method. Go read the book. Then once you've read the book, maybe you have an old laptop around that nobody uses. Try taking the keyboard off. Try seeing what's underneath. How does it connect to the motherboard? How difficult is it to remove that very delicate ribbon cable and replace that very delicate ribbon cable? This is not, with hands like mine, this is not, I don't do well with mobile devices. I'm fix mobile device. It's not for me. I break them all the time. I get somebody more delicate, more specialized, someone who doesn't drink as much coffee. They're the ones who need to fix the laptop keyboard. But if you're working on a laptop that's broken, you don't have to worry about it so much. It is interesting to see what's in there. And of course, I have videos and pictures in my video of what's underneath the keyboard. And there's a whole YouTube available to you that can even go into detail, where people are really going into detail of taking these things apart. You will not be asked to physically take apart a laptop keyboard on your exam, but it will certainly ask you, what do you need to look out for? What are the steps? What is important to keep in mind when doing that? Those are the things you need to know. So just take it a bullet at a time. Some people race through these exams in 2 weeks. They take their exam and they're done. These are usually people that have been in the industry for quite a while. That's a very rare occasion. The average for most people is to take about 2 to 3 months per exam. So it takes about 2 to 3 months for the Core 1 exam, 2 to 3 months for the Core 2 exam. So after about 4 to 6 months, they are finished with their A+ studies. That's the average. You might be less than that. If it's me, it's going to be more than that. I don't have a lot of time during the day to dedicate to a certification study, so it might take me 6 months for a single exam. That's not bad. It's not abnormal. It's not unusual. A lot of people take 6 months for a single exam, and it's nothing that you should be concerned or self-conscious about. That's how long it takes you to get through the material. Take as much time as you need. This is not the time to start creating arbitrary deadlines because of what you think it's going to be. You don't take the exam until you know every bullet that's in these exam objectives. If that takes you a month, then it's a month. If it takes you 6 months, then it's 6 months. If it takes you a year, then it takes you a year. You can't make it go faster than it's going to go, and you can't somehow shortcut it. There is no easy button for IT certification exams. You really have to know the content to be able to take the exam. So use all of those different methods, learn in different ways. I think learning from video, learning from book, learning from hands-on all get stored in your brain in a different way. It's my very medical explanation of how the brain works, which I know nothing about. But I feel that it does that because I feel like if you're doing something hands-on, there's a muscle memory associated with it. When you read it in a book, it's a different way of learning and it's stored differently. And if you're watching a video and watching somebody do it in front of you, it's another way of learning. So all of those should be used. All of those are important. So there's no single recommendation I can give you, but I can tell you that it is a little overwhelming when you look at that large group of exam objectives, but that's okay because they come easy. They're just a sliver of information you need to learn about all of them. You don't need to understand how to engineer a CPU to be able to understand the value of a CPU. You don't even need to understand how to change a carburetor, how to replace one in your car to understand how to drive the car. And right now, your certification is about driving the car, not replacing the motor. Later on, maybe you take a certification where you're replacing the motor and there's a lot more to know, but you build on it. And this is your first step in those building blocks. So don't sweat the small stuff. Don't worry that there's a lot of information here because there is a lot of information there. You just need to cut it up into tiny little pieces. You're going to be fine. You will be fine. So that's my recommendation to you as well. Let's get some more questions. I know I'm at the top of the hour. Usually I have a hard stop at top of the hour. Today is not really that different, but I want to get a couple more questions in because you got a lot of good stuff in here. Let's start stepping through the other questions here. So now what if we've been talking this whole time about exams and whether you take the 1100 series exams version 14 or you take the 1200 series exams version 15, the newer, although at this point, both of these exams are current. If you look at them as a point in time, both exams are valid and equal to each other. One is not newer or older than the other. They are both as valid as the other one is right now. So the real challenge you have is time. Time, it's the fire in which we burn. So especially right now, we're in June. When we have another week or two ahead of us and it hits June 25th, you then have 3 months. So right now you have about 3 months and 2 weeks until this 1100 exam series is retired and the exams go away forever. So the question that Shannon asks is, if I've been studying the past month for 1101, and I'm assuming in this case that you've not taken or passed the 1101 exam yet, you've just been studying for the past month, should you study again? Should you change your studies to the 1201? That's how I interpreted this question. And that's how we're going to all interpret it as well. You've been studying for the past month for 1101. Should you study now for the 1200? Should you shift over to the 1200 series exam? That's really what this question was about. And I got a couple like that in this list. And the questions that came through were, or the answers that really came through, the things you should think about are, now that you've gone through this process of understanding a little bit of this, we're a month in, do you think you'll be able to pass both exams by September 25th? If you're just 1 month into the 1101 right now and you're not ready to take the exam, then it's perfectly reasonable for you to shift over to the 1200 series exams, the 1201 and the 1202. And as you've already seen, not a lot of huge differences between the two. So here's what happens. I'll give you a little inside baseball. So here's what happens behind the scenes when these exams are released. Because we've gone through, I created 600 series exams, 700, 800, 900, 1,000, 1,100. This is my 1,200 series exams. This is my 7th iteration of exam series that we have created. And we rebuild all of our video series. Our entire training course is rebuilt from scratch every time. But obviously, content is the same between many of these. As you saw, there was a lot that was the same between the 1101 and the 1201. 1101 and 1201, the version 14 and the version 15. There was a lot that was similar. So because of that, a lot of the information will be identical when you start comparing these two. In previous versions, about 30% of the exam was different. It was a much bigger difference moving between exam versions, so you really had to be strategic about it. But this time, not only in the Core 1 exam, but also in the Core 2 exam, the numbers are much lower. Single digits for the Core 1 exams, the differences. Not much is difference between. Why was there not much of a change is the real question. And the reason there wasn't much change this time was because of COVID. We effectively shut down for a year with anything dealing with IT. There was not a lot of people working to innovate, working to invent, working to create new, working to build newer applications, newer operating systems. We stopped for a year. And what you generally will see between exam versions with the CompTIA exams is there's a new version of Windows on every single new exam version. For the first time in 18, 20 years, and probably before that, this is the first A+ exam, new exam version that has come out where the version of Windows was exactly the same. It was version 11. Windows 11 was the version associated with the 1101 and 1102 exam. Windows 11 is the one for the 1201 and the 1202 exam. Nothing changed with Windows. Therefore, a smaller amount of the exam changed because of that. So I tell you that background story because if you are planning to move from your 1100 series studies and you're like, I'm never going to make it to September 25th. I don't like the pressure of dealing with that time frame. I'm going to shift over to the 1200 series. You couldn't have picked a better exam to do this with. It is perfect timing for you to make that shift because you won't lose a lot and you only have to now learn a few extra things. And that is really quite an advantage for you right now. This is the best possible scenario you can run into. Now, if you haven't started your studies at all, take the 1200 series, take version 15, take the newer one that does not retire on September 25th, just so you're aware. I like the style of some of you in the chat room who say, no, I work better under pressure. This drives me. I can appreciate you people who work better under pressure. I've seen you, and it's true, you do. I am not that person. I do not like the pressure. I do not care for it. Sam, I am. So I'm not going to do the additional pressure of setting myself a date, an arbitrary time frame, and working towards the arbitrary time frame. I hate those. Maybe it's because I work so long in sort of the corporate world that whenever we would do a project, some third party, no person that you ever met project manager would come up with a due date for something that was ridiculous. Okay, that needs to be done by Friday to keep us on track. Like, who gave you Friday? That's a 6-month process. To say it will not be done by Friday is an understatement. And then everybody gets to fight about the Friday date when the Friday date was simply arbitrary to begin with. So I'm not a big fan of arbitrary dates. This one is pretty much written in stone, though. September 25th is the date. So you have to work yourself to that date to be able to do it. So that's the key. And our 1200 series course will be done in the next week or so. So everything will be posted with all of that in the next week or so. And then we can work on practice exams. That won't take very long to update because not much has changed with the objective. So this is all going to happen very, very, very quickly here. You will have plenty of 1200 series study materials to choose from. this is kind of the normal process that takes place whenever a new exam is introduced. It takes time to produce materials that exactly match the released version of the exam objectives. And it usually takes about 3 months. Hey, it took about 3 months. That's kind of how it works. So that's my recommendation for you. If you think that maybe you should switch, that's probably you're telling yourself, yeah, you should switch. And it is obviously you will need to purchase new study materials if you already have some. So if you have 1100 series books, you need newer 1200 series books. Do not use your older books to study for a new exam. Do not use newer books to study for an old exam. These are two different things, and you want to be sure that your books match those exam objectives perfectly. So that gives you the best chance of passing this exam. So that's what I would recommend to you as well. That is the idea behind those. Maybe that can give you some perspective to be able to get to that point. There is I can't get through every question here today. I wish I could, because there are some great questions in here that you have asked. Let's see. I want to end this on a good one. So this is one, I think we haven't talked about this today. So I want to kind of focus on this. Pardon me. This is one that's sort of out of scope for A+, but it's such a popular question. This is from Paul. Paul asks, what roadmap would you recommend for someone starting with minimal experience who wants to eventually become a penetration tester? Now, as many of you are aware, my background is in cybersecurity, working for a next generation firewall company as a systems engineer. I got to meet with thousands of IT professionals across hundreds of different companies and just talk to them about what they were doing for IT security, some of the specialties that they were working on, what did they do for reporting, how did they handle events, how did they provide additional security at the firewall level, what did they do for viruses, and what did they do for penetration testing. And so many interesting stories and different ways that people did these things. The people that are doing penetration testing and forensics in the world of IT security are at the upper echelon of their technical security careers. These are people that have a very detailed understanding of Windows operating systems, Windows at the workstation, Windows at the server, Windows on portable devices. They have a very solid understanding of mobile devices, iOS, iPadOS, Android, and others. They are very familiar and almost have an expert level knowledge of networking. They could design an enterprise network, put it all together with redundancy and all the protocols you need and all the security you need. They could easily do that if they wanted to, but that's not what they're doing. They're doing penetration testing. Because a penetration tester has to visualize everything and understand how everything works to be able to penetrate it, to be able to get through it. And so these are people that are really well-versed in some cases, the intricacies of how applications are developed as well. Because if you know how an application is built, then you know how to get through an application with a security vulnerability. So not everybody has all of those skills who works in penetration testing, but they certainly have a good percentage of those skills in their pocket that they can pull from. That is their core knowledge. That is their foundational experience in this industry. You are not going to get out of school and get a job as a penetration tester. That does not exist. The school is telling you it exists. I've seen them. I've seen online the boot camps. Become a penetration tester in 7 days. I've seen them. They're on the internet. Nothing could be further from the truth. None of those are accurate in their description. You cannot become a penetration tester in 7 days. You cannot become a penetration tester in a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, not even a year. You need a lot more foundation to get to that point. But the jobs are out there. I love forensics. If I had to pick some way to go with technology and security, my next step probably would have been forensics. It didn't work out that way for me. Instead, this is what we do. And it is still in my mind that What if I wanted to find out more about the forensic side? And since the time I was even thinking about that, the world of forensics has changed dramatically. Imagine, for example, the difference between Windows and hard drives. Now we're dealing with Linux and SSDs and other operating systems as well. Imagine the differences in forensics. How do you find the data? What's hidden on that SSD? How do you get to some of the information that's not directly accessible? And is that useful? Those are things that forensics, people working in IT forensics do every day, is find that little piece of information hidden somewhere in an operating system that provides additional details of what's going on there. So don't put yourself out of the running when it comes to these higher level IT security positions, but also have in mind what the proper positioning of it is so that you can build a strategy for yourself. So this might be a 5-year plan. Put it in your book, put it on your calendar. It's the 5-year plan. What do you need to get there over the next 5 years? Okay, well, maybe you already have a good knowledge of Windows. Maybe you don't have a good knowledge of Active Directory. That would be a good thing to know for penetration testing. Maybe you have very little Linux experience. There's a great place to spend a year of your time. Have you been a Linux administrator? Now's your time to be a Linux administrator. What about Mac OS? Does your organization have Mac OS? Of course they do. Do people hate Mac OS and IT? They do, but not because Mac OS is bad, because they know nothing about it. If you understood how Mac OS works across the network, you would realize how much similarity it has to the way Windows works across the network, to the way Linux works across the network. It just becomes another set of protocols going back and forth. And the real difference is, where do you click on the screen to get to what you want to get to? There's not much difference with Mac OS and anything else. And you then can go, now that I've got a good understanding of the world of mobile devices and operating systems and understand how all of those work, now let's layer on the networking part of it. How do you switch? How do you route? How do you make these redundant? How do you watch the protocols? How do you perform packet captures? What are the packet captures telling you? These are all valuable skills to have, especially as a penetration tester. I cannot tell you the number of things that I have found sitting in an airport. And this goes back to my days when I was a systems engineer for Network General, working for that sniffer product line for almost 10 years. You become very knowledgeable in what you can expect to see going across the network. And you start to be able to read these protocols as they're going by, not only at the TCP level, but the application level. Now I can plug into a wireless network and tell you amazing things that I'm seeing. You plug into a network at a hotel, at a coffee shop. It is remarkable what you're able to pull out of the data that's simply going by. Sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes it isn't. But you have to know what to look for. You have to have experience doing it. You have to maybe work with a mentor that has some knowledge in this industry. Learn as much as you can. Be a sponge. Get yourself put into the positions. You should always be working in a job where you are not the smartest one in the room. Always. If you find yourself being the most knowledgeable one in that organization, you've got the wrong job, because you're no longer learning. You're the one that is now, you know everything there is to know about the position that you're in. You now need to move somewhere else or in a different position where you can now start learning again, where you can be the dumbest one in the room. It's not something that humans like to do. We don't like to be the dumb one. We don't like to be the one to raise our hand and say, we're the stupidest one about this topic. Could you explain it again, please? What you often find is, what I found in training classes like that, I would sit in the front. If I didn't understand something, I would stop them right away and say, nope, I'm a dummy with this one, not quite catching. You went from A to C. What happened with B? Well, let's go through it again. They'll go through it again. And I've told this story before. People will almost always catch me after the training class and say, thank you for asking that question. I had no idea what B was doing. Well, why didn't you ask? Oh, I don't want to seem like I'm stupid. Oh, well, you're in luck, because I don't mind. I'm absolutely the person that you would like to seem stupid. I have no problem being the dummy in the room, because if I don't understand it, I can't take it out of the room and I can't do anything with it. I have to know it right now so that I can then apply those skills when I get out of this room. And when you're in the world of sort of representing products, when you're working for Palo Alto Networks as their next generation firewall expert, then you really have to be the expert when you sit down with the customers. So you don't have the luxury of kind of, I'll just learn it in the field kind of thing. No, you won't. You need to learn it now so you can use it in the field. So these are the skills and things that are important in your roadmap. You need to be able to take all of these skills and operating systems and all this you learn with networking. And as you go through all of this, you will naturally begin to understand the security aspects of this, because when you're a Linux administrator, you have to secure your Linux operating system. When you're a Windows administrator, you have to secure your Windows operating system. When you're working with mobile devices, there's all of the additional security concerns you have about those. So the natural part of being in IT, every job has some level of security associated with it. So that's good if you're planning to get into penetration testing, forensics, or some other high-level security role. You need to have that knowledge that you will continue to build on and continue to have a stronger foundation, and it gets bigger and bigger. And eventually, it's no longer a jump up to get to penetration testing. It's a lateral move to become penetration tester or work with a group of people that are doing penetration testing. The jobs are out there. The skill set is what you need. And it is not something you can hit the easy button and you're done with it. This takes time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of learning. There's additional certifications. There's time you're spending in the field. There's late nights. There's early mornings. There's flights. There's travel. There's time away from your family. There are sacrifices that you will make to get to this point in your career. It's not something as easy as saying, today I think I'm going to go and put in an application to be a penetration tester. It's not even close to being that simple. There is a lot more that goes into it. But if you put together a plan of where you want to be, and it doesn't apply just to penetration testing, to anything in IT, figure out where you want to be, put the pin in the map right there. Now all you need are the places you're going to stop along the way. So you want to build these stepping stones that will get you to that upper level. You're constantly going to be leveling up in IT. This is the place where you start using that leveling up to get you a job working as a system administrator, job working as a network expert, a job designing networks, a job working with security tools, and then eventually a job applying the security knowledge you have to be a penetration tester or to be someone who is working through the task of getting that high-level IT security position, which really is some of the higher-level positions you will find outside of the roles of management. Now, if IT management is your thing, if you want to be a manager, a vice president, an executive vice president, that's a completely different set of skills that doesn't require that level of technical knowledge, but that's also a very different job. That's not an IT job. That's a management job that happens to be in IT. IT jobs are different. It's a technical job, a lot of requirements associated with it. Just put together the plan. And that starts today. You may not even have an IT job yet, but you want to do something in security. Now's the time to go. Now's the time to do it. So have a thought process in mind, mull it over the next day or so. That interview question of where do you want to be in 5 years, which is different than where do you see yourself in 5 years. Let's make it more precise. What do you want? And where do you want to be in 5 years? Put that pin in there. And now we need to start working towards it. Now, one of the things you may find, just as an aside, is that the best made plans often get waylaid. You often are suddenly going a different direction. Wait, I wanted to go this way. No, we're going to go over here for a little bit. That becomes a bit of a challenge. IT sometimes drags you along in different ways that you were never expecting. My recommendation to you, just roll with it. In my career, there have been plans that I've set up, and here's the way I'm going, and this is what we're doing. And then I get a phone call that says, yeah, maybe you should go do over here and do this. Oh, haven't even thought of that. That's something I have not considered maybe. And then suddenly you're going another direction. Suddenly the days change. You're going that way instead of the way you thought you were going to go. That's just life. That's just the way things work. My recommendation, you just go with it. You just follow wherever the road is going to take you. You're in the boat. You're traveling down the river. There's winding parts of it. Sometimes you just take a different path. Sometimes you take that fork in the river and you go the other direction. Nothing wrong with it. Maybe you didn't even know the fork was there. And as it turns out, kind of nice down that part of the river. So sometimes, and that's one of the advantages of IT, one of the things I always tell people who are just getting into this industry, there are so many different things you could be doing, and you have the control on where you're going most of the time. How could you say that about any other industry? It doesn't exist that way in medicine. It doesn't exist that way in manufacturing. Travel, transportation doesn't work that way. This is one of the few fields where you have some ability to move you through the process, and there's no ceiling. You can keep moving up your entire career. So just things to think about. I know that's not really a technical answer, but it's one that hopefully you're able to take in some of that information, and maybe that will have an effect on where you see your certification path going and other things that you will do throughout your career. Well, I think that brings us to the end of a good 2 hours. I've been a little over time. I hope that's okay with everyone. Thank you so much for being here in the first hour. We love the Q&A part in that first hour. I think I almost like the Q&A part in the second hour better. I think I'm probably saying that because I don't have to write those questions. You do. It goes much faster when I don't have to write them. But I think we got a nice segment of questions you were able to provide to us today. And I sure appreciate you being here, providing those questions and giving us something that we can talk about in the after show. We do one of these study groups every month for Core 1 and one of these study groups every month for Core 2. Our next live event is in 2 days. On Thursday, we do our Core 2 A+ study group. It's for the 1202 exam. And like today, many of the questions will also apply back to the 1100 series as well. We'd love for you to come back and join us there as well. If you're watching this on the replay, you can watch that one on the replay as well. It's coming up on that playlist if it's not already there. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.